Yeah.
Are we ready now?
Okay, we're live.
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. Today is Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. The time is 4 o'clock p.m. and we are convened at the Provo City School Board of Education. We are meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. And we will begin with a roll call. I'm Jennifer Partridge, Board President.
Gina Hills, Board Vice President.
Meg Van Wagenen, Board Member.
Rachel Rose, Student Board Member.
Emily Lindstrom, Student Board Member.
Emily Harrison, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member. Devin Daly, Business Administrator.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent.
Okay, and we will excuse Melanie Hall today, who is out of town, and Lisa Boyce will be coming very shortly. So, and we want to welcome everyone who is joining us today, and thank Bonnie and our tech team that helps us every time to put our meetings together. We appreciate their help. Do we have a motion to convene our study session?
I move we convene our study session.
Motion made by Board Member Van Wagenen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second my motion.
Second by Vice President Hales. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we are now in our study session. We will begin with our board member training, and that is me today. Bonnie, is it possible to pull up the slides?
Sorry, I'm stuck on.
That's totally fine. It's also attached to our agenda item. But my topic today was effective board members, taken from our document from the Utah School Boards Association called The Guide to Effective Utah School Boards. And I just wanted to share a few highlights from this. First of all, I just want to say we taught a class at the national conference about a week ago about having an effective board team, and I think overall we're doing really well on these things, but it is always good to have a reminder on that. So, first what it says is that an elected member of a local school board serves and represents the residents of the local school board member's district. So that means we're all from different parts of Provo and we're representing those areas of Provo. But the manual says additionally that our responsibilities are to all students and taxpayers, welfare of all children in our whole district and our community. And especially right now, we're going through some discussions with some really challenging topics that for all of us on the board to keep in mind, and for our public to also understand that we have interests in both places. The communities we're most familiar with, the areas we represent, but as well as looking out for the best possible solutions for all students and community members throughout Provo. So, moving on to the next slide, if you look at the handbook, there's more in there than this, but I just pulled out a few things. So the first one is a reminder to just avoid surprises with one another, especially in a public meeting. So if you are hearing things from the community, like a complaint, or there's something on the agenda you're not very happy about or whatever, contact Wendy or contact board leadership, depending which of those things it is, and let us know ahead of time so that we can work through it, we can resolve it. Wendy or Devin, I guess it depends what the issue is, right? They should be aware if you're hearing a complaint about something in the district so that they're not surprised when it comes to them through other channels later, right? We want to keep everybody in the loop. And kind of along those lines, if there's ever a concern with something you're hearing about an employee, we don't want to address that in a public meeting. We want to make sure we praise in public and correct in private, and so bring that to our attention privately so that we can look into those things that way. Another point they had in there is you should have enough information on something that you feel comfortable with your vote. I think we're really good at trying to give lots of information and talk through things and not just make hasty decisions. But if you're feeling like there's something missing that you really need to have, like, let's work on that. But come through Gina and I on that, because if we all bombard Devin and Wendy with, what about this, what about that, that can be overwhelming because they have plenty of other work to do. And also I think it's important for us to kind of figure out together what what are the most needful things? Because we could get, 500 pages of documents that maybe aren't very relevant and may not be the best use of their team's time. So if we go through leadership and work together to figure out what's the info that is the most relevant that we all need. So, does anyone have any questions on that or thoughts? Oh, Gina.
I think even when, so sometimes we have personal relationships with people in the district, or we feel like we can joke with them, which I think sometimes we can, but when it's in a public meeting, I think it just needs to stay positive. 'Cause sometimes we joke around and we aren't as positive, but I think in public meetings, we just need, because the public don't know, and then it feels like they're being called out. Does that make sense? We don't want to call anybody out at a board meeting, especially if we haven't warned them ahead of time, and especially if it's not one of, we have 2 direct employees, which is Wendy and Devin. We shouldn't be calling anybody else out, in my opinion.
Thank you. All right, also encouraged to keep an open mind in board deliberations as we are studying all the information. Don't come with your mind already made up if we haven't studied everything already. And represent the board with integrity, dignity, and ethical conduct at all times. And then I wanted to add a couple things that weren't in the manual, just from my perspective, having been on the board for over 7 years. First of all, your voice matters. We can make the best decisions when everyone gives input, and some of us are really talkative, that would be me, and some of us are more quiet. And so if you're one who's prone to just like raise your hand all the time and talk all the time, it's fine to say something, but try to keep your comments relatively brief, and then don't comment again till others have had a chance. And if you're one who tends to be more quiet, including our student board members, just know that we value your input, and don't be shy to speak up and share what you're thinking, and you have things that you can contribute to the conversation. And we want everyone to have a chance to weigh in, especially on important things. And then I would also, last thing, would just say, when you go to vote, often votes are pretty, we're all in agreement about policy or whatever, but sometimes there's something that most people are going to vote yes and you want to vote no on. That is totally fine. Like, we should have those differences of opinion, but I think a good practice as a board member is to explain your reasoning if you are going to vote differently for the board, so we can understand where you're coming from, but also for your constituents, that they deserve to understand why you voted the way that you did. So, all right, any questions, comments? All right. Next, we will move on to our Timpview construction update. So we're going to turn over to Trent. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate the stuff you just talked about.
Oh,
That's relatable in our world and has been part of our progression getting better. But Westland, we're going to let Josh kind of tie in here, and we're going to kind of walk our way through things. For those who may not know, we have 2 projects that are going simultaneously. We're treating them as separate projects, but not really. Inside, we've had the cafeteria going. It just clipped a year. It'll be a year on the 28th. So we're coming up on the very end of the cafeteria phase. We had it and then we lost it. Oh, there we go. All right. So cafeteria. This is actually, go ahead and go on back. That is actually, we have another picture of the outside, don't we? All right, go ahead. So this is today, actually yesterday. So you'll see, this is inside the cafeteria. This is the east wall of glass. The glass is dirty. We haven't cleaned it yet. But you'll see here in a second,
looks great.
we're basically done. So, I mean, the installation process has almost come to an end. So, the ceilings are installed, all the lights are installed, the flooring's installed, all that stuff has taken place. You just see the very edge of a guardrail system that has gone in. That was the temporary one. The permanent one went in yesterday afternoon. So, this is kind of the stripping line as the kids walk up. They'll walk up and load right here in these spaces. wheel through, get their food, and then go back out. The cabinets that you see here are the point of sale, so they'll be able to move across, and we're just waiting for the TVs, which the district provides. So we're pretty much there. If you want to swing into the kitchen itself, all the little balls that are all over the ground are actually the packing that comes off of all the stainless steel equipment. So that's our guys ripping the stickers off and trying to hit the garbage can, but missing something.
Wow.
But that stuff will
So
come
they
off.
shouldn't be on your basketball team. Is what
Well,
you're saying.
yeah, some of us just aren't. But we'll go through, we're finishing pulling the plastic. It probably finished today. We're going to go through, clean the floor really well tomorrow. And then Thursday, we'll bring the tile setters back through that kitchen and take care of any imperfections that might be in the floor, that kind of thing. Do that one last polish for a couple days to make sure things are looking good. Monday, we'll bring in the cleaners, the professional cleaners, and they will work in that kitchen and cafeteria area for about a week. And I will be in there myself on Monday. I'll be doing a Westland internal quality control checklist on the building. We'll go through that. My guys will go back and fix the things that I want to have fixed before the architect comes on it. And he will be here a week from Monday, or it'll be a week from Wednesday, excuse me. And he'll do the punch list on that. And then we would be ready to turn that building over. It's that close. We anticipate May 13th is when we're going to call it a substantially complete project. Now, that doesn't mean you get to have the space. Okay, that means that we've accomplished our task in that area. We still will. Is there another picture forward? Oh, go back. Go one or two back. Let's get into the cafe. Yeah. So right along this edge, we will, just past here is the temporary wall that for those of you who attend school there will know about. We will put some plastic up right here. That temporary wall has to come down because this summer is when we remove the ramp, we remove the stairs that are there, and we tie in and create a new staircase down in the commons area. So that whole area will flow. And that's part of this next phase. So, but for all intents and purposes, we're going to seal the cafeteria off and call that space complete. So that's really where things are. That's the upstairs. Josh is going to take you to the downstairs. This is your downstairs.
Before, not.
This is how you gave it to me. Oh, I gotta get a look at that. This is kind of what things look like. There's another picture here, a little more, and then there's probably one more picture. So this is a really good picture. The far side is the boiler room that the first two pictures were in. This is the opposite end, clear, and just kind of all the stuff that was there. Okay? Josh has done his #1 job. I want to show you this video of what it looks like today. So this is what we've turned it into. This is, of course, after all of the piers that we put in, all the saw cutting, all the floor tear outs, the reinforcing of the building. This is what that space will look like today. So we almost crashed into a column, but we missed. So the room is, of course, clean. There's going to be a couple more lines they put on the floor today for safety areas, for loading and unloading zones that need to be set aside. But all your equipment's in, clean, polished. The floors are ready to go. We've kind of restored that area. You should be good for another 75 years in that space. So
We had a nice discussion with Jesse, the custodian, about how important it was to keep that area clean and not use it as a bulk storage area.
So if I speak to that as the outside guy looking in, it is. That is extremely important. The boilers and the chillers that you have in that space, you will extend the life of that equipment, not for just 1 or 2 years, but for decades. If you keep the area clean, keep it dust-free, you will extend the life of that equipment. So, just so you're aware. let's talk, any questions on the cafeteria upstairs or down? Just, let's go ahead and switch gears. Oh, that's the outside. So there's the exterior. All that's left really to do on the outside is pick up, clean up, and there's a couple light fixtures that we're putting on underneath this soffit. Everything else is basically done. So we'll have that on the roof. So it's pretty much over. Let's shift gears to the new phase. So in our schedule, we talked about a very complicated shotcrete wall. That has been ongoing. We're seeing footings going right now. We're seeing, these are piers that are being installed underneath every footing that will go in the building now for the next couple of years. So this is our shotcrete wall. It runs basically the entire length of the building, actually. And so process of digging down and install. We're going to walk you through that a little bit. Step one was to expose the footing. Now the footing is right up here on the existing building. You're up here and here. So we've come underneath that existing structure, removed the soil, clear underneath the footing, and then reinforced that, and we drove these piles in before that happened, and then we exposed them. So we put stilts on, and then we dug around the stilts, if you will, and came back in. And then, why don't we go to the next photo, it'll help us out. We anchored into the soil horizontally and went back 45 feet in many cases, anchoring into the soil to hold the wall up. This will hold the building up and help any soil from sloughing off. And so that entire process, and then of course after that, we come back, we tie the rebar mat, we install, these little guys are drains that flow behind. So if there is water that comes from the mountain and it passes underneath your building, it will hit that drain surface, it will be controlled, and then as we build these footings, this next picture in a month from now or so, we'll be able to show you a drain system that takes that water and funnels that water away from your building. So it will not build up and stay there and cause problems for you later. And so then we came back through and did the shotcrete. This is actually a little video of that going on. They worked away in layers from the bottom up, but that is them shooting that concrete, really, on the wall. I showed a video of my phone of this to my daughters, and they said, I want a bite, it looks like chocolate ice cream. So anyway, that's kind of where we are with the shotcrete wall. So, and it's a sloppy, nasty mess of a process. But it will now hold the building up. While we're doing that, over the spring break, we came in at the front entrance that was on that building, your main entrance. We have removed that. It's all completely gone. The green is actually a waterproofing that we put on beforehand. So in case it rains, none of that water will telegraph, go back inside the building and flood out the staff on one side and the students in the commons area on the other. So that's what that represents, but that whole area is now completely down and gone. We didn't shut down school, we did that during spring break. You guys never knew we even did it. So that is kind of where we are today for the most part. I'll entertain any questions that you have concerning the project, either phases or what might be coming up. But just kind of
What questions?
let you have at it.
I was at Tempe the week after spring break, and they were very, I was there after school, but they were being very loud. The assistant principal said that at the end of the school day, there was loud noises.
Construction workers were loud? Who was loud?
Yeah, nobody knew what was going on. It was just loud, very loud.
That process,
I don't know.
shooting the concrete horizontally is loud.
Okay.
I won't kid you, that's loud. But to speak to that, we have met with Momi and her staff multiple times and laid out testing times and days, and we are specifically guiding our work around that, so we're not super loud. But if it's at the end of the day and the students are out, I don't know what if it's during class, Terry, I don't know.
Well, I was
But
there after school and it was loud, which
After
isn't
school-
a big deal, but the assistant principal said that that noise had been going on since like 4th period, so.
Oh.
And I don't know what was
Yeah.
going on that particular day, so.
So, I think we've done as a team a pretty good job communicating that with Momi and her staff. We might stub our toe once or twice, I don't really know. I don't know that we had a complaint, but we're gonna be noisy once in a while, so.
Rachel, you're a student there. Do you have any questions or anything for Trent?
I don't think so. No one has really complained too much about the parking, and I haven't heard any construction noise, so I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, the parking on the campus is tough.
Yeah, but it's been okay, I think.
Yeah.
Gina?
I think you said this, but I was taking notes and missed it. The cafeteria will be done, but not, so it'll be done sooner than it will be turned over. When will it be turned over?
Well, you guys will be able to use it, but a week later, I'm tearing the opposite side back
Okay.
down. So it doesn't make sense for you guys to go in and occupy the space. So I'm just gonna seal it off, and it'll be yours,
Right.
but yeah, by that time, all the testing will be done. We kind of talked with Momi about it. We're not gonna use the space.
Right.
So it'll just kind of look brand new and stay brand new. The furniture arrives, I think, the first week of June,
Okay.
whatever they're gonna do with that. And then,
So I guess my question is, will they have use of it next school year?
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah,
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, next year it's all yours.
There was just not a lot of, if it had even been available now, moving
Yeah.
everything over spring break to try to disrupt what was already
Oh, I-
working well this year was
I just was double
a
checking
challenge.
it. It
but
would be
yeah,
ready by
no,
next year.
Oh, yeah.
The lunch staff will be moving all of the stuff over there in June and July.
Yeah.
So my question is just moving forward, like how long will this footings work be happening? When will people start to see something progress above the ground level?
We're gonna be in the ground a while.
Okay.
One of the earlier things that we will do that you might see before anything else is we're going to try to build the outside screen wall that's masonry. And that is intentional. I want to recreate, there's a fire line underneath that sidewalk that's on the west side of the property. And I have to replace that fire line and drop it. So it's right here. The fire line basically goes right underneath there, kind of on a diagonal. So we're gonna take that sidewalk out as soon as school gets out. We're gonna dig that down and replace it. And there's a screen wall that comes along here and now comes and wraps and goes clear along and follows Timothy Drive. We're gonna be pushing to put that in just to isolate, kind of get me out of sight, out of mind, and just let the public roll back and forth on the city sidewalks. And we're gonna try to minimize our impact, but we will take this entire space coming up here in 5-6 weeks. We'll take it all. So, but coming up out of that, these are the first initial footings that we've got. They're back here digging. This is another footing that's getting ready to go. They're already doing that. Plumbing is already going in underground. All that kind of stuff is happening. But a mason will come in. He'll do some of the subterranean masonry in the next month and a half. You won't see anything up in the air September. Really, probably. So, we had a good rough guess off the cuff.
Yeah,
So,
makes sense. All right, any other questions for Trent? Thank you so much,
you.
not only for your hard work, but for making an effort to come every month to give us an update. We
happy to do so.
That's
Fun to see the progress.
Yes,
Thank you.
very exciting. All right, next is item number 6, our discussion of courtesy and hazardous bus routes. And Wendy, are you taking that?
So Troy is here and he will.
Oh, sorry, Jared.
Yep,
Okay,
so
Troy and Jared, what do you?
Troy will do most of it.
Nothing's changed since last year.
Okay. Well, first, we better
So-
review.
That's the short end of it.
Well,
There's
first,
no new ones.
Troy,
So
can
what
we
do you
first
wanna know?
review what for the public, what are we talking about here?
So these are going to be the unfunded routes or stops that don't meet qualification for state funding. So any of them, so they're going to be all the ineligible routes for funding. So I got maps of them here, but a lot of them are going to be, you know, either full routes or, you know, a stop within a route, to where we have to remove time and mileage for the state funding model. But like I said, as far as compared to last year, there's no new additions to the unfunded routes as of right now.
Hey, Meg.
Yeah.
With these routes, are these routes being well used, utilized by our students?
Yeah, I would say I was
Sense of that?
pulling some numbers today. The main unutilized one is going to be that Franklin one.
Okay,
That
that's
we
still
started there. There's probably like, I don't know, mid-40s eligible in the zone. And
Okay.
when I counted it today for the last week, anywhere from 8 to I think 13 kids
Okay.
are using it between the morning and afternoon. So other than the rest are, yeah, definitely utilized. So yeah, you got the Franklin bus 123 will be the full route. There is I got another sheet with costs tied to it.
Yeah, yeah.
For how much it is costing us.
Go ahead, Meg.
Sorry, I got lots
No,
of
you're
questions
good.
apparently.
I'll answer what I can.
With all these routes, is it still, you know, there's a piece to this as well that you, last time you seen that there's value in maintaining some as well to keep enough lines for our bus drivers, right?
Correct.
Like that's a balance that we're always playing,
Yeah.
right?
So it's a balance
Find-
of the
trying to
kids
find-
and me employing my people, so we have people to drive the buses.
Right.
So,
And so at this time, you feel like, yeah, these all are warranted and it's a good flow for our
yeah.
utilization of our bus drivers.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, there could be some, you know, that as far as, you know, deeming is the hazard still there, you know, if a sidewalk goes in.
Sure.
So, you know, like the Amelia bus 43, you know, there's a sidewalk on the north side of Center Street all the way down. But there is, you know, then crossing Geneva Road, which would be a state, I think the state would be the ones that have to supply the crossing guard, I'm not sure.
If we were to remove that route and say you're going to cross Geneva,
Yeah.
you're saying that we would put
They'd be
a,
crossing.
and the state would provide a crossing guard? 'Cause it's
I'm not
state
sure if
road?
it's the state or the city, but since it's a state road, I'm not sure exactly how
The north side of Center Street
Yeah.
on Geneva is considered a state road, but the
Yeah.
south side is a city road.
Yeah, so we do have a small area on the south side right there behind, yeah, right there on the south side is by the 7-Eleven. But the majority of the kids are all coming from the north side over there at the Charlie Court.
What were you going to say, Jared?
So just as a reminder, procedurally, the board will review these annually so that,
You go all the way to the front for you to communicate.
so procedurally, the board needs to review these on an annual basis so that we can give parents notice if we're not going to provide that service for the upcoming school year.
Right.
When there is a circumstance where perhaps there's been an improvement, we would coordinate that with the city. As of right now, there is nothing in motion to address that on Center Street. We're just discussing right now. We do have a meeting with the city again tomorrow. Perhaps we'll hear some updates, but that requires them to do a study to coordinate that with the state as well. But a crossing guard isn't a snap of the fingers. It takes quite a bit of time to go through. But as a board, what your role will be is to determine if we'll continue to fund these based upon the recommendations from transportation, and if something came out of that traffic safety committee and nothing had come out of that, to suggest not to provide those. There was one temporary agreement with the route at Wasatch once we moved to a new location, and that is one thing that you'll need to consider, whether we continue to provide that courtesy service. Perhaps Troy can offer a recommendation about that.
Where, yeah, with that one, we're probably running about maybe 35, 40 students regularly. Out of like 68 that are in that zone.
So, sorry, you're speaking specifically to that extra stop that was added to collect more kids for the hazardous route, is that?
No, that whole
Just the
route's
whole
funded.
thing, just the
Yeah.
whole thing, okay.
The whole thing's in the box.
So Treasury reporting,
Right.
that route, we're seeing a healthy number of riders.
Yeah.
But the Franklin route, we're not, that we provided to, because of safety and crossing 500 West, we're not seeing the numbers of ridership there. So that's something for you to consider.
Lisa, did you have something?
Well, I can't remember, I'm interested to know do we have a cost per route that we approve?
It's on that Provo
Okay,
report, FY26 dashboard finder.
Okay.
So there is a cost per route and even a time of day.
So Jared, for me personally, I think it's worth funding that route this next year for the Franklin one. But I am wondering, is there value, would we be able to enlist the school community council at Franklin or someone to get a sense of why there are so many eligible students that aren't using that route? Because we are concerned about them getting across that street.
We can work with Principal Dalby. They got really organized at the time to advocate for this route. And I'm sure that they would be responsive to that as well. But we're not certain why the ridership has declined so much.
So maybe that could be part of their safe routes discussions at the beginning of
Because the
the school
city
year.
withdrew the crossing guard at that intersection at that time, so we're not certain.
Okay,
Community councils tomorrow at Franklin.
that might be something for their next school year when they talk about school
Yeah, mine looks different.
routes.
Yours for sure.
We'll have to.
So are
Okay,
we,
Emily.
are we just gonna like just approve it? Is this on our approval at the business meeting?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So we either
So-
approve it or we suggest a change. So
And you're
Can you tell us the
suggesting we
total
approve it,
cost?
yes?
since I didn't-
That's a direct
Spit
question.
it out.
That'd be what you think we should do.
For all of the routes
don't know.
on here, it's $132,000 a year that we're spending on approximately.
Yeah, and that's based off the numbers of our reimbursement rate, which comes out back at about maximum of 85%. So
Yeah, so
they would still be
total
the extra
cost-
percentage that the state wouldn't have funded.
Total cost is probably closer to 200,000, just because we aren't reimbursed for our total cost.
Right,
ever.
it's not,
And
it's never
so
fully,
this
it's not
would
fully
be,
funded.
this would be assuming the 80% amount that
Got it.
is.
And of those routes, the only one that right now would use up like a full cost of a bus as the asset would just be the Independence High route. Because that's the only thing it does, those are all type of funded routes.
I see,
So-
and that's why those ones also allow for maybe utilization considerations, right, for our bus drivers.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you guys for being here tonight. All right, next we have policy, and we're gonna turn it over to Wendy. We will start with our first readings.
Okay, we're gonna start with policy 4178. So if you wanna go to that, this is an update to a current policy about driver education. Policy committee, we did add like a purpose about that we offer this program. And then on line 19 and 20, it had originally said to receive a Utah learner's permit, and we're like, well, you're going through driver's education to actually get a driver's license, so we changed that. We also eliminated lines 38 through 42 because it used to be that students could pay for a portion. So it was divided into the actual coursework and then the simulators and the actual driving time and observation time. And some kids were doing like the coursework online, and then they would just want to come and do the driver fee, and we had 2 fees associated with it. That is no longer the case, so I clarified that with Clay, and he said that's what we need to clarify in lines 44 through 45. So our recommendation is to take that back to policy committee. We just have a flat fee. So if they choose to go and do the course online, it doesn't matter if they want to come and just do the driving part, they have to pay the same anyway. And he did state that in most cases, it's so much cheaper than going to a private entity anyway that they haven't had very many complaints of individuals who want to do that. So if the student doesn't want to sit in the class, then they can do it through like Utah Online. We did at Rachel's suggestion, and I thought this was great, on lines 48 through 50, that students that are eligible for a fee waiver only get the class fee waived one time. And then like if they fail it or they don't complete it in the right amount of time or they miss the attendance requirement or any of those pieces, then that would be at their cost. So we added that language there. So we'll make that clarification on lines 44 to 45. That would be our recommendation going back to policy committee. But do you have any questions about this policy?
So if we're adding this in, drivers ed teachers will need to be notified of this policy change?
It's the same. It's been our practice. We're just clarifying the language of it and updating it. So this has been our practice for a while. So they do know about it.
Do we have a procedure? I didn't take the time to look it up. Do we have a procedure? Because I know as a parent, that was the hardest thing to figure out the process of
Yes.
how do I actually get my kid in the class.
Yes.
And
was really hard.
And they
like,
seem to
it's scheduling.
prioritize some kids more than, like how, it's, and I think it's changed over time too, but I don't know where to find that as a parent.
So let me talk with Clay about that. I don't really feel like that's a board prerogative to
Right.
do because I feel like that's going to be school-based prerogative. But if we're feeling like that's not clear, then let me work with Clay and let's work with the individual high schools to get that
Okay.
fixed.
Yeah, to that point, Reese, this has come up twice with some students at TIMPU that I know they can't get in, so they do just do private out of the convenience, like it feels like it's just such a backlog, and I
Okay,
wasn't
so
quite
I'll
clear
find
with that, but, yeah, like what that process, or, you know, what the real.
I don't know if we just work with the schools or if we have a line in here that we expect the schools to have it clear somewhere.
And then they want to
They're always in the website.
So you almost just need to know, you have to know months ahead. So that
All
makes
right,
sense.
anybody else have any feedback on this one? All right.
Okay, we'll go on to policy 3020. This actually used to be under policy 3214. What we have done is we have taken our proposal is, and we haven't gone through all of the policies yet, but we have non-discrimination, we have bullying and hazing, and then we have a whole bunch of policies that are tied to student conduct and safe schools, and they were all smattered throughout the 3000s. So there was no way to kind of figure out where to go. So we have now clumped them and renumbered them. So they're all going to be in a sequential order. So it's like I can go in and easily find that. So this is the policy on non-discrimination, harassment. We did add retaliation to the title of the policy because it does talk about it quite a bit. And we added a purpose statement on lines 12 through 14 that this is an important priority for us because of wellness and safety, and that it's important for students and employees. And we will have to have an employee version of this policy of bullying and hazing. It'll basically be a replicate of the policy, but it needs to be found in both the employee section as well as in the student section, because there's a real emphasis in that teachers cannot be bullied by parents or by students. They have protections from that as well. So, and then we took out this weird part on lines 19 through 20. It actually is in federal law that we have to provide equal access to the Boy Scouts of America. And when we researched this, it's actually just that you have to provide equal access to these outside entities that are coming in to utilize your buildings. And so we felt that was more important to emphasize that on lines 19 and 20 and to strike out the Boy Scouts of America piece and just talk more about providing that equal access. And we will link all of those federal regulations in there. We just haven't done it yet for the first reading. We did update the individuals. So for student matters, it's Jason Garrison, updated his information. For employee matters, we did do Rebecca Rogers, who is the Director of Human Resources. And then it starts to go into a whole bunch of definitions. We have changed out all of the language where it says his or her to just be there. And so you'll see those corrections go through throughout the policy. We did add a definition. There was not in any of the model policy updates for a complainant. So if you look at lines 86 through 88, you will see a definition there, an individual who's alleged to have experienced discrimination, harassment, or retaliation prohibited by this policy, including a student employee or an individual who reports such conduct on behalf of another. And then we also added a definition for an investigator to designate that it's a district designated person and they're trained specifically to handle these things. It's not just like, hey, the secretary can come and like do this. Like, it's a very specific type of training that they go through to evaluate evidence, and then they have to demonstrate that they have no conflict of interest. So we have a group of people within our district that are trained with that, as well as at school sites. So if it comes into student services, and let's say somebody in student services has a connection to that individual or has interacted with them, then we assign somebody else to handle that. And then, let's see, and then we have prohibited conduct, starts on lines 139, it gives all of those examples. And then we decided, starting on line 180, to put lines, those lines in the procedure instead of, because this was about how you submit the complaint, how it's going to be investigated, and that just felt more procedural in the process. However, I think at the end, I feel like there was still, yes. So at the end, about the responsibility for the dissemination of the policy, we decided that that needed to stay in the policy. And then we have not been doing this across our district. This is in line 458, ensuring that by October 1st of each year, every student receives an age-appropriate explanation of the policy, and they're given an opportunity to discuss it in class. So that's something we'll have student services work on, and what that looks like for different grade levels. And then making sure that that principals are sending out notification to the parents that also includes what those age-appropriate pieces are. And then we do keep records of what complaints come into the office, and so it has information about that. On line 491, we talk about the district office. We do not have a district equity office, so that seemed wrong to have that in there, but just that is a place where people can get information about compliance. And then on line 508, right to file complaints with external agencies. We changed the title of this because it didn't, outside reporting procedure didn't make sense. It basically means that you can still file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights or the Department of Justice as you're also filing a complaint through the district. That just because you go through the district doesn't preclude you from going through your other channels as well. And then we did put on the training piece that employees receive information about this. They are trained as part of their Safe Schools training. But we also wanted to look at a couple of other districts about, they have like very specific places on their website where you go to report harassment and bullying, and it goes automatically into a very specific like inbox for an employee that reviews it within 24 hours. And so we want to look at that, and I want to work with our communications team to get something very similar set up. And then we will add all of the legal references. This is the form that is the report form. That needs to be all online, so I'm working with communications. We'll get all of that put into an online form, and then there will still be a way for somebody to come into student services to do that. But before, they were printing this and trying to fill it out, and we just need to have it so they can submit it electronically. So if you haven't had a chance to read through it, if you could, that would be great.
Oh, so I was just going to ask about that one specifically. It doesn't feel like it belongs on there at all.
Right.
So we're going to remove it. And
Yes,
just
we will
say
strike
there
it.
is a
That's a
form.
great point.
Please use the form.
Yep.
Okay. Any other feedback?
Sweet. And then if you go to 3020, this is the procedure. So we just took all of those pieces about the grievance procedures, the duty to report, confidentiality. It does state in the confidentiality piece that we try to keep things confidential, but sometimes when you go through an investigation, they're gonna know like that you reported it, because if it's a specific event that happened between two people, there's no way I can keep them be like, well, some anonymous person reported this, so we do it to the best of our ability. And then we go through and talk about what that initial complaint process looks like, and the responsibilities that we have for reporting that. And then there's different levels of that and how you can appeal that if you don't feel like that it's been followed appropriately, what can happen. So that's why you have different levels of reviews, and it goes up in terms of the chain of command with each piece. We'll add line numbers to the procedure as well. I don't have line numbers on mine, I don't know why. Maybe I just didn't make them visible. Questions about, we felt like that made more sense to have that in the procedure part, so. Okay, let's go to 3025, which is prohibition of bullying, harassment, hazing, and retaliation. This will have to go to on a specific board agenda item, and we will have to solicit feedback. I plan to take this to the Community Connections Committee as well as the Parent Advisory Committee to have them review it and just make sure that we have some input from individuals about this. It could be something that we can push out to principals for PTAs and that type of thing. There's a whole series of definitions. On line 39, where it talks about bullying, it goes into the specific types of bullying. The reason this definition stops at staff bullying or student bullying is because it wants to identify that bullying is for both groups. Like both of these groups, employees and students, are both protected under this particular policy. And then you'll see the different types of bullying are defined later. We define communication, we define hazing, and we have kind of meshed some things from our old policy as well as adding in new language to make it more clear as to what those things would be. You can see an example of that like on line 87, anything that's creating extreme mental stress or extended isolation or extreme embarrassment, shame, or humiliation. Sometimes people don't think about that those things could be considered hazing in certain instances, you know, like when you do rituals where you go pull people out of bed at 3 a.m. and you take them to breakfast and you video them while you're doing that, that could be considered a form of hazing. If you're putting them in a position where it's humiliating to them or putting them in a compromised position. And then any type of initiation, all of those kind of make sense. So you have all of those different definitions. And then on line 170, it starts talking about that bullying and abusive conduct is an added verbiage that's coming in, is prohibited, that hazing and cyberbullying are prohibited, and retaliation is prohibited. So anyone who brings a complaint forward, it gives them, as soon as that complaint comes forward, there is a lot of protection for that particular individual. It also means that if you make a false report, you can be significantly disciplined for that. And then I also appreciate that it has improper sharing of recording of an incident, and that can also fall under this as well. So we have to be really careful about that. It does give some protections to parents in terms of when the investigation happens, then there has to be an action plan. You can't just state that you investigated it and consequences were administered. The parent has to be informed as to what is the action plan. They don't necessarily need to know all of the consequences that come, but what are we doing to prevent this from happening or to do our best to protect the child? What does that look like? And so, anyway, so we talked about that. And then it has parental notification. And the reason the suicide threats are in there is because parental notification is of bullying, hazing, retaliation, and suicide. Like all of those things kind of go onto a single form that has to be reported up to the state. So, questions about this? Is a very long policy. You can look it over. It is a first reading. We do meet as a policy committee I don't think next week, but the first week of May, so you have a little bit of time to look at it, and then you can bring back any suggestions that you have. I know Melanie added some suggestions about do we need to pull some of this into a procedure instead, and so we'll look at that more thoroughly before we bring that back. Okay, online learning is policy 4050. We have put the Provo City School District recognizes online learning, provides unique opportunities, and I like Lisa's comment there, we can strike that, so that just sounds a tremendous opportunity. It does have subjective language there, I agree with that. And so we can just start with the purposes. We want to provide these opportunities for students. We are required to provide information and notice. It does talk about how students are included in daily membership and how they access fee waivers. And then you'll see in the actual procedure, we have updated to mirror what's happening with Provo Online. So we have restructured eSchool. So in procedure 1, it gives like what our offerings are online, what does that look like, how are you eligible for that, what are the enrollment procedures that are tied to that, how does the credit get reported, how do we support students, what are the vendors that we're using for this, and then access to facilities and how we provide reports. And that we actually do have to provide an annual report to the Board of Education about how effective our online learning is and what's happening in that. Questions about all of those?
I just have a little question of how we do things. In the policy, it says that if there's a student who chooses to do this, we would provide them with technology and Wi-Fi needed to participate if they're not doing it at the school building. Do we have anybody
Yeah, I'll
that we
check
help
with
with the Wi-Fi, and if so, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Like, just
Excellent.
say that they can't. Yeah, I recognize Sean's not here.
Thank you.
Just curious. Lisa?
Yeah, I do have a question. K through 6. Do they, is that also Utah Online? Okay. I mean, reading through this, that's what I understood, but I just wasn't clear. Okay, thanks.
We don't have to provide that, but we can.
All right, are we ready for our second reading?
All right, these are gonna go fast because I only have a short amount of time, so here.
Actually,
Don't tell me that, just say I have a short amount of time. Let's go with
Short
that.
amount of
Short
time.
amount of time, here we go. Okay, student records, my favorite, 3,200. I think we got this one cleaned up really well and kind of coordinated with 3210, which is FERPA. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to provide some clarification on 3200. The reason online 159, where it talks about access to records and it says school officials, including teachers who have legitimate educational interest, and administrator or teacher is entitled to access a student's medical records, has to be trained in our HIV training, is because it's tied to the medical records. That's a requirement in there, that you understand that there are certain pieces of confidentiality. There's confidentiality with all medical records, but there's some really specific stipulations that are tied to that. Then, let's see, let me make sure I don't have anything else. And then we linked on line 273 specific steps for amending a student record, because that's in the FERPA protocols. So we just linked that right there for them. And then on lines 305 through 307, more specific information on protocols. This is on the annual notification of student rights, that we're referencing them back to the FERPA policy. And then we have access rights. In addition to, this is on line 362, that this is how a parent can access those specific documents, and parental consent that is required if we're asking certain types of information from a student. And then we will also link that to procedure 2. Also talks about custodian of record. Any questions? We did have on lines 523 accessed by school officials again, so we struck all of that because it had it by school officials, school employees, and we already have that earlier in the policy. So all of that is already listed. So
Were there any changes to this since our last?
just the red, So anything that's in red.
The red, okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You bet. I try to do black as this was our original policy, blue are updates, and then reds are from what policy committee has worked through. Yeah.
My only question, so there isn't a procedure, right, linked to this policy, it's linked to the FERPA policy. I just want to make sure, I'm comfortable leaving kind of the procedural pieces of this in that policy, but is that something everyone else thinks is fine? Do you know what I'm asking? To look at that policy?
Linking it instead of listing it.
I'm just saying, we sort of included it all in the policy itself in this case, under student records. But I feel like it's okay because it doesn't, we don't dive too much into how they request records.
That's correct.
We just sent them to the FERPA procedure.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Because if a parent comes to student records to say, how do I get my student records or change a student record, they kind of have to go to that FERPA procedure
Yep.
to really get this done.
Yes.
Okay.
Then if you go to 3210, this is an update. So 3200 is actually a new policy, and 3210 is our existing FERPA policy that we've updated. And we did add on line 22, if you scroll down, Bonnie. There we go. It says, this policy closely aligns with policy 3200. And once we adopt that policy, we'll link that. And then this just gives the overview of FERPA and then all of your procedures. So if you go to 3210 procedure 1, we did add on line 26 on procedure 1 that a student that is 18 or older can deny their parents access to their student records. So we did put that in there. It actually is in a couple of places throughout these policies, but we added that specifically there. We felt like that was important.
And that's law, correct?
That
That's
is
not
law.
us.
That's law.
Okay.
Yep. That's to comply with the law. Anyway, then it just goes through and talks about who can request, how do you request to amend a record, all of the things that we've talked about. And then procedure 2, we changed the title of this. So instead of it being prohibited disclosure, we, thanks to Lisa, we got parental notice and consent for sensitive student information, which completely aligns it makes much more sense here. And so just basically states that parents have to provide consent for certain specific pieces to be requested. And this is also in the student records policy, so I actually feel okay about it because it's actually in multiple places where we're reaffirming that we do not ask for this kind of information. This is not something that we're allowed to do. And then it does give exceptions for, like, if there's a crisis intervention. Okay, that's FERPA. Let's go to married students.
Can we take a step back?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes from last time, but when we were talking about 3200, I was looking at the wrong one. But I had written down on 3200, the first one I talked about, do we need to add about the new law of districts coordinating, sharing with each other, that they share the records within a certain amount of time to that policy?
That's a student threat only, and that's coming in the Safe Schools policy.
Safe schools.
Yep.
Okay. Because I wrote down that we were going to add it, but okay, yeah, so safe schools.
Yep, it comes in Safe Schools.
Thank
You're welcome. I feel smart that I know that. It's just because I sat through a
I
superintendent's
was going to
conference
say,
where
like,
they
wow,
went.
Wendy.
They went through like 400 policies, and I was
How
like,
do you
Way
remember
to
all
pay
this stuff?
attention.
well, those kinds of things I kind of pay attention to. Like when it comes to school safety, you kind of want to pay attention to that.
Yes, absolutely, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
you
you.
bet. Married students, Oh, it wasn't married students where we made any change. It's just basically a married student has all the same rights that any other student has. Do you have any questions about married students? Okay, let's move to pregnant students. We tried to change this language a little bit, where it says pregnancy and related conditions shall be treated as any other medical condition. Students may be provided reasonable modifications to participation or granted a leave of absence for a period deemed medically necessary by the student's physician. Students shall be reinstated to the status they held when the leave began. Felt like that made a little bit more sense, so I hope that clears that up. All right, 3328 is resolution of student complaints, which is much better than just student complaints. We don't want to make it sound like that students are just going to come and complain to us, but this is our process for when they have a complaint, what this process looks like. And we established level 1 goes to the assistant principal, level 2 goes to the principal, level 3 assistant superintendent, either elementary or secondary, level 4 deputy superintendent, and level 5 can come up to the superintendent, and what that looks like. We always want students to try to resolve things at the lowest possible level in the same way that we do with parents. Okay, policy 5082, which is,
I have a question on
please.
that. With
Yep.
the adding in the assistant principal, is that for all levels, the school ages? Or is that just at our secondary schools where we have lots of?
no, that's all
Okay.
of them. We would like them to go that route
Okay.
first. Great question. Policy 5082, limitations on employee extra duty assignments. We felt like there was some confusion on this, like, does this policy apply to licensed people? Is this applying to ESPs? So I went in and added this section here. I thought this might help a little bit. So it says extra duty assignments for licensed professionals. Licensed employees may support a school or the district in an extra duty assignment. Because licensed employees are exempt, they are not eligible for overtime for completing these extra duty assignments. Licensed employees who serve on committees or agree to coach or advise extracurricular or co-curricular activities will be compensated according to a stipend schedule. And then we have the extra duty employment for ESPs, which is they are allowed to take on these assignments, which we didn't have before, as long as it's profoundly different from what their duty is during the day. And then we did establish that a career status is not available in an extra duty assignment. So like, those are renewable each year. So I hope that helped a little bit. Okay. Then we go to 5080, which is contracts for education support professionals. Rebecca Rogers would like us to maybe just change it from retirement and health insurance benefits to just benefits in general. And if we need to pull this one back and pull this one out so that maybe we have to have a definition of benefits, that might be a better idea. We tried to add in language on lines 16 through 19 about why this 2013 rule is a weird rule. Like what is this thing about 2013? So I tried to add some clarification here. Prior to 2013, a 30-hour work week was not required for ESP employees to receive retirement and health insurance benefits. After the state of Utah changed these thresholds, only ESP employees who work more than 30 hours per week are eligible for, and she just wants it to say benefits.
What is the reasoning for not specifying that?
Because there's more than just those two kinds of benefits. Like now you can have vision benefits, life insurance, and so she just said any benefit that comes, and then we could define it. So we may want to just pull that and let policy committee maybe look at, just to make sure we get it right. If you feel okay about it, however you want to go on that. But. Policy 5320, procedure 3, you don't have to vote on this because it's just a procedure that's tied to this. It creates some greater clarification on overtime. And how this works for non-exempt employees. And so if you go down to line 62, it talks about ESPs and their overtime work. And then we also have our licensed overtime work because they're exempt. They're not eligible for overtime, but we wanted to add on lines 103, just this kind of reinforces policy 5082. Other extra duty assignments such as coaches, advisors, and committee assignments will be compensated according to a stipend schedule. We put C policy 5082. Okay. Mediation of contract negotiations, policy 5026. This is required by the state as a structured process for mediation when the Board of Education and a recognized teacher association can't reach an agreement. And just talks about the process of what that mediation looks like, what the hearing looks like, and what that follows. So, and that's just in Utah code. We didn't change anything from the model policy or any of that. 5095 is reporting child sexual abuse. We cleaned up some language on this on lines 26 in that paragraph under reporting of child abuse. So we put, whenever any employee of the district knows or reasonably believes that a child has been neglected or physically or sexually abused, such employee shall immediately, clarified, within 24 hours, notify the administrator or building principal, and together they will notify the nearest peace officer, law enforcement agency, or office of the State Division of Child and Family Services. A report to the principal does not satisfy the employee's personal duty to report to law enforcement or DCFS. It is the practice of Provo City School District for the employee to complete this report to law enforcement or DCFS together and to complete the required documentation, which must be submitted to Student Services for appropriate reporting to the Utah State Board of Education. And then,
Do we need to just clarify, it says for the employee to complete it together?
with the principal. Let me add
So
it.
either the employee and principal to complete this report together, or, yeah, I mean, it was said right before, but that would just clarify.
I just fixed it on the,
32?
I fixed it on the original document. Let me make sure that I have put this in correctly. Because I know that Lisa had asked about lines 68 through 76, reporting of child abuse to both the school principal and the superintendent. Shall immediately oh, I did add that, so I just forgot to put it in pink. So it's on line 74 to 75. I apologize, I didn't put that in pink. That a student may have, if a student has been physically or sexually abused by an educator, we immediately report that information to law enforcement and DCFS and to the State Board of Education and UPAC. So it kind of looked like there was a, like when there was an employee doing something, we had a different reporting procedure. And it's actually, we still follow the same reporting procedure and we do these extra things. Okay. 5096 is reporting student misconduct. We had it as reporting prohibited acts, and that just sounded weird. So we defined student prohibited acts. It's really the purpose of this policy is about really making sure that employees are reporting on things that might happen in terms of, like, let's say they're a coach and a hazing incident happens and they may not want to report that because they don't want to discipline their students. It's a requirement of their job that they have to report that. And then we also will link policy 3510 with student activities. This is in line 43 because we have a student code of conduct that's going into that as well. And notice that it doesn't have to have happened on school grounds. So it's important because people will say, well, that happened on the weekend or that happened outside of this. And if it's impacting, it has a nexus at the school, then we do have to report it.
I have a question on that. So the added part, starting line 26,
Yep.
well, I guess it's line 27, where it says that they'd have to report for students who are participating in these specific things. Well, I guess co-curricular, but if it happens in just a regular classroom, don't they still have to report it?
Yes, but that's in a different policy. So this is specifically tied to student prohibited acts that are happening kind of off campus or outside of the school day. We need some clarification on that.
Yeah, I don't think it says that even in the purpose statement. I don't think it says that. So I just thought it was for every,
Maybe in the title too, reporting student misconduct, extracurriculars
We could
related, or.
We could add a thing in the purpose statement that might state that the purpose of this policy, while it is an expectation of employees to report already things that happen during the school day, this policy specifically outlines the responsibility of things that are happening outside of the school day.
outside of school day. Okay. So do we need to hold this one?
You might
to
want to
change
hold it. I think so.
Okay.
I think that's fine. Okay, personal protective equipment, policy 5125. The board has determined that we have to be aware of workplace hazards. We did add on lines 12 through 14, this equipment will be provided by the district as determined by risk management and must be up to date, maintained, and comply with current codes and legal requirements. And then there were no other changes from the last reading. Okay, 5328 is nursing mothers in education. There have been no changes from our first reading on this. Any questions on nursing mothers? Okay, and then policy 7060, procedure 3. This is a very specific type of situation where an adult is coming to remove a student. So 7060 talks about parents checking their kids out. Those are in the other procedures. This one is specifically about, in particular, we're looking at like law enforcement or something like that. So the person positively identifies themselves as the student's custodial parent, as well as production of documentation to establish their custodial rights. Usually we know that, right? But the person is in possession of and produces a valid subpoena or court order instructing the school to deliver to the student to the person named in it, and the person can positively identify them as the person named. And then number 3 is the person is a properly identified law enforcement officer in possession of a valid warrant that names the student. And then we added this language: the administrator shall notify the parent of this request from law enforcement unless there are extenuating circumstances that prohibit this notification as per law enforcement requirements or protocols by the Division of Child and Family Services.
So they have to be a law enforcement officer, is what we're saying.
In number 3, they do.
Oh, it's one of the following.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Then never mind about my other question.
Okay. Policy 3220 is about school uniforms. That's pretty exciting. We did change the language on lines 75 through 79 so that we hope it made a little bit more sense. Parents of students attending a school may petition the principal to initiate, modify, or discontinue a school uniform policy. If the principal receives a petition signed by parents representing at least 20% of the students enrolled for the following school year, the principal must submit the question to all parents of students who would be affected by the proposed policy. We added on line 92 through 94 that to avoid frequent changes, board decisions on uniform policies will be in place for a minimum of 4 years. So you can't just keep switching it back and forth because that would get really annoying. Yes.
So if you go back up to 75 through 79, so it says all the parents will have, okay, so the question will be submitted. So if the majority of parents, whatever the majority of parents say goes?
Okay, that is correct.
And that's
Well, no,
state
the-
law, right?
It is state law. So I think what you're asking is, do we need to have a statement that says that that then that policy will go based on what a majority of the parents want? Because it doesn't specifically state that there, right?
Yeah.
It's up to the board, isn't it?
No, so that's only on a district level uniform policy. So if you look at those lines there for 92 to 94, that's if you wanted to implement a district level policy, that does go to the board.
I think at the end of line 79 in that paragraph, we should
Okay.
like finish that story,
Yeah.
right? Like if then it will go out to all of the parents for a vote, and if
And the
the
majority.
majority of that vote, whatever determines that school's
Okay.
votes.
And then if we're, is it probably a good practice to do the 4 years there
I
as
think
well?
so too.
Okay.
Yep. I was just gonna say that. We should pull this policy too.
Yeah.
So policy committee can look at it.
Do you think 4 years, we thought 4 years was a good time frame, but if anyone else feels like that should be different. Sounds good. Just could get expensive.
I think children would be divorcing their parents if their parents were.
It's very possible. Okay, I think I'm almost out of time, so I'm hurrying. Policy 3006 is about higher education savings options. We are required by state law during kindergarten enrollment to talk to them about a Utah Educational Savings Plan account. The question was, do we do this more frequently? We certainly can. So if that's something that you want to entertain, we could make this more readily available. It's up to you.
I feel like when your child enters middle school, sometimes these things hit differently than when they're starting kindergarten, but I don't know if anyone else does, but it's not expensive and super complicated to ask that the information again be provided. But again, I don't actually know how challenging that is, so I don't know what other people think about that.
It could be, well, I don't know how people would see it, but it could be in the list at the beginning of the year when you have to register and you do sign the FERPAs and all that. It could just be, here's some information there.
We
Or-
should put it in our newsletter, summer newsletter.
Or principals send it out once a year or something.
Now, just a reminder, because also sometimes you're like, oh, I can't do that right now, and
Or
then you
people
just forget
maybe-
that's even a thing
Yeah, right.
until down the road, and then
Yeah.
you're like, oh darn, I forgot about that, you know?
Okay, so let's pull this one and then we will look at maybe some ways in which we can say, we can talk in policy committee about what we think might be more reasonable there. Okay, policy 3510 and its two accompanying procedures are about student activities. This talks about curricular activities, has definitions of co-curricular, extracurricular, and just that we have a procedure of as to how these are managed. So if you go into the procedure 1, it talks about eligibility. This is something we had our high school principals go through. We did add a section about that there are fees that can be associated with this, that there's academic eligibility. We updated that. I checked to make sure that all of the offenses that are tied to alcohol and drugs and those pieces are what our schools are practicing, and that is what they state is also on Register My Athlete and as part of their requirements. And then that we have a student code of conduct that is also a part of Register My Athlete. But we also have that in, if you look at the student code of conduct, which is procedure 2, goes through that. And then we added on line 247, there's new legislation that went into effect. It doesn't go into effect until August 1st, but this will encompass that, is that we have more prescribed moratoriums on sports, more time in the summer, although there's a lot of flexibility with that. So we just put that in there as part of it so that it would align with that. Go ahead, Gina.
So this says, both of them say student activities, but then it's saying register my athlete and athletic director. Is this only for athletes? Okay.
No, great question. So student code of conduct will apply to everybody for whatever
Okay.
activity
But
it
register
is.
my athlete is just for the athletes?
Yes.
Okay. But everybody, so like if you're participating in band or theater?
They'll usually have a student code of conduct that is specific to their
Okay.
school.
Okay. So anyone who participates in anything outside of class curriculum must sign one of these?
Yes. And we've talked with the high school principals about making sure that it is something that they cover with the students, because we don't think it's been explicitly taught in those specific ways. Like we used to have I've been in schools where they would have a fall sports meeting, fall activities, winter activities, spring activities, and they would go through this and each student would sign it as part of that. And it would be an assistant principal that would pull in all of this. We'd usually buy them lunch and we'd pull them in and talk through all of that so they understand those pieces of it. Go ahead, Lisa.
I'm wondering if at the end of the supervision section in this, where we're talking about coaches, assistants, and advisors not permitting these behaviors, if we want to just link the new policies that we're passing around, bullying,
Yes.
hazing, etc. Just
Great ideas. I think we did it in line 295, I linked it. Coaches are
Oh,
expected to
sorry.
follow the Code of Conduct Policy 5090 Procedure 1. But we can link it up here too.
That's their
We can-
code of conduct, but didn't we just pass it
Yes.
around?
Yes,
Reporting students participating in
No,
activities
hazing,
or
reporting student misconduct policy.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I feel like you should just pull 3510 so that we can clean up a few
You
pieces
wanna
of
clean
the
that up?
budget.
Mhm.
I think so. Okay.
So
Nice.
good
Job.
job.
You're
You're ahead of
to when you were supposed to start.
I'm now to when I'm supposed to start
You're crushing it.
For the second reading.
for the second reading. Okay, good.
Go ahead, Lisa, and then I have a.
Well, I just want the public, if anyone's listening and people here to all recognize how much work I feel like our superintendent, our business administrator, and our leadership team do around policy. A lot of districts hire an in-house policy writer, and I think a significant amount of work and time clearly goes into this, and you guys have done an amazing job this whole year of attacking all of this policies that we need to be updating and or adding in. Anyway, I'm really grateful. It's a lot of work you're doing. So,
Thank you. Well, that kind of relates to what I was going to bring up. It's just that I appreciate all the work, all of you, including the board members who are on the policy committee. I know you spend a lot of time reading these and offering suggestions and things, but Gina and I have been talking of just how we're worried about all of you on that committee because it is a lot. So first of all, a lot of these are just because we haven't updated some of our policies in a long time, and others are because changes happen with state code that we need to make sure we're in compliance with. So I guess the question is, and we don't have to hash out right now, but how do we find that balance of going through things in a proper way, making sure our policies are updated, but not feeling like we have to do so much so fast that we kill you off, right? Burn you out. We want our team, our district administrative team, to spend most of your time supporting our teachers and our student success, right? And not in the policy. And it's interesting in the wake of looking at how we can trim our budget. At the same time, Gina and I have been like, do we need to hire a part-time person to take this on, right? And how do we find budget for something like that? And what's the best use of our resources, once again, in relation to this? So something to consider, and if board members, if you have input on that, but then also for the public, just to know that we are wrestling with those things. And as you talk to state legislators, I mean, we try to encourage them to limit the number of bills that affect us, and there were fewer this year, but still in the little parts and pieces, weren't there over 200 bills that still affect us with
So
wording?
they predict 64 policies have to be
64
rewritten.
Okay,
So that's the number I got today.
okay. I knew there about that.
Hey,
many
isn't
bills.
that less than last year?
It is less than last year. Way to have a positive attitude, Terry. I like it.
But I
Emily.
would echo what you're saying, like, your skill set should not have to be just on policy. Like, there's so much energy and time put into policy that we're missing out on your energy in more fun, exciting, student-driven, teacher ways, right? Like, that's a lot of just sucking your energy where it could be better distributed other places, where someone with a clerical brain that likes to do that is hire somebody to do that. Like, it just seems like a waste of your talent.
No, but that's utilization of the resources.
Right.
You're limited
Yes.
time.
You're getting really good at it.
You are really
Except
good
still
at
not,
it.
still not.
No, you are good at it. I'm just saying, like, it's not that fun.
And
I
you're
think it would
really
be
good at
better-
also,
Your energy is
Yeah.
to keep us like in the right direction as a district, and policy is,
yeah.
in my opinion.
It's
Well, I
less,
mean, it's
it's
good.
less
We have to
related to our
have it, but
strategic
it's
plan,
like, ugh.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this something we could cost share with some of the newer districts that are
We can talk to them about it.
creating? You know, just think if they're hiring someone to help with policy and there's a percentage of their time that we could contract that way,
Yes.
it would be more affordable, but also, like, if the policy came to you guys already, not just the model policy, but thoughtfully drafted, and you could give feedback on that, it would probably take less bandwidth for you, but also you would probably be able to have more impact almost in that way, right? Because, I don't know. So to me, that's worth pursuing and thinking
I have
about.
had a couple people reach out looking for internship possibilities who are currently MPA, Masters of Public Administration candidates.
Amazing.
Who are looking for internships for the next couple months. That could be something that we utilize. So I'll talk to Wendy about that tomorrow.
And in terms of the speed of policy, I did hear at the National School Board Association conference, like they were recommending taking like, you know, one series a year, and just that way you're on like kind of a 6-year or 7-year, whatever it is. Maybe some of them are shorter, so you would consolidate those, but basically then you know within fewer than 10 years you have put eyes on each policy to make sure that things aren't slipping through the cracks. Sometimes you'll find a policy and it will have been written a very long time ago and not be helpful to protect you and your practices. And so I think if we sort of, once we get wherever you feel like we need to be, to have that structure would set a pace.
I agree.
You know,
Just in general, how do other districts do policy?
they have an attorney.
So we're
The
like
big
the
ones
only
do.
one that doesn't.
We're not the only one, just,
But-
there are a few smaller districts that don't, but most of them have an attorney and they run policy committees, so
Yeah.
they bring the drafts and then the
Yeah.
board goes through it, they present it at board meeting.
Yeah.
They're responsible for all
So
these.
all
So
this
that'd be
needs to do
the
during
Wasatch
the
Front districts, the smaller rural districts.
They don't do that.
It-
Sure.
Yeah,
But
all
we're a
in.
medium-sized district,
Yeah.
and other medium-sized districts are having an attorney do it, right?
Some-
They're bigger.
Murray
Murray
doesn't,
Ogden
Ogden
doesn't.
doesn't. The only one
There
that's
are
kind
some.
of getting more close to us would be Salt Lake, but I also think that they just need an attorney more in general, so.
Well, they had been larger.
Yeah, and they have them, yes, excellent.
And Tooele hasn't had one in the past, but they are growing, so they are also moving that direction.
Oh, okay, thanks.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to our next item, which is the review of our high needs positions for the 26-27 school year. We did talk about this at our March 27th meeting, but we had neglected to put it on our agenda to vote on it, so we're bringing it back to vote today. So Wendy or Devin, would one of you like to just explain it for us?
Yeah, so high needs positions get additional monies, and we have to identify what those positions are. The board has to approve those. It used to be the state set what those positions were, and now each LEA can produce that. So we are recommending any special education position, K through 12, and any science or math positions, 7 through 12 would qualify.
Okay. Any thoughts, feedback since our last meeting?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we'll be voting on that later tonight. Okay, now we've all been waiting for item number 10, our discussion of dual language immersion and school boundary and consolidation possibilities. So before I turn it over to Wendy, just want to say we talked about at our March 27th meeting the fact that we are having declining enrollment, significant enough that we need to look at how to address the challenge of that, right? After that meeting, we recognized that the way we rolled it out was probably not the best way we could have done it. And so Wendy sent out some communications about that. We've since set up some community meetings. We already had one at Canyon Crest. We have one tomorrow night at Spring Creek and some others coming after that, which are on our calendar. But we want to take a step back and just make sure we're being really thoughtful, not only in our internal process, because I think as a board, we've had a little more time to mentally process individually than our community has, obviously. But we want to involve the community, make sure everyone can be a part of helping us first understanding what the challenges are, and then figuring out the metrics of how do we decide how to address those challenges. And I'll let Wendy say anything else she wants to say about that in a second. But then taking it even a further step back, we have been over the last probably year or so saying we need to look at how we handle our dual language immersion programs in our district. With a district our size, we have 4 languages, 5 schools. That's a lot more than other districts of our size. It creates its own set of good things, but also challenges. And so we should look thoughtfully at that and see if we should make any adjustments. And so in light of the boundary and enrollment discussion, we've determined we can't really move forward on that till we know what we're doing with DLI. Because any changes to DLI can affect what happens with who's attending what school, right? So tonight we're going to spend most of our time on DLI.
Just a very simple question, because people have been asking me, why does DLI cost more? And so pretend I'm in first grade and someone tell me in the simplest way possible, why does DLI cost the district more money than a regular school?
I think that is a great question.
Okay.
Is it okay if we turn it over to Wendy and if she wants to answer it first, great, or if it fits in better with how you wanted to approach things tonight, Wendy, we can answer it for sure somewhere.
Yeah, it'll, I'll address it throughout. How about that? And then we can do a summary at the end. Bonnie, can I take over the screen for a minute? Thank you. Oh man, it's making me enter a code. I thought it knew who I was. Rude. So on Board Book, you will see a handout that looks like this that has the different tables in it, and then it just has some notes on it, just some things to kind of pay attention to. But some of these I felt like almost were fuzzy or small and hard to read, so I just took these charts and also put it into a separate PowerPoint just so that people could see it more easily, and I thought that might be more helpful for our discussion. So this is just about to provide information. You guys have all submitted a lot of questions about DLI and what enrollment trends look like, how many kids are coming in from out of the district, what are the costs associated with it. And so we have talked about DLI over the past year, and it just feels like all of that information is in a lot of scattered places. So I was trying to put all of that together into a single document that would be an easier resource for parents as well as for you as board members. So one of the very first questions, I think Terry was the one that asked, what is our DLI enrollment trend? And so we went through and pulled these numbers. And I added just some comments at the end that kind of, and this is just elementary for right now because I don't have, I'll explain in a minute why it's harder to pull enrollment numbers at the secondary level because they're not always in a class that's tagged as DLI. So unless I'm tracking the name of the student, which we have not been good about, I'm going to be really honest about that, it's really hard to watch how that student progresses. That is something we're much better at now. When we look at this enrollment, so you'll see our projected for 26-27 is all the way to the left, and you'll see that we started with our 21-22 numbers. There's been kind of this assumption that DLI enrollment has declined over time. That is not an accurate assumption. It has remained pretty steady. Now, what you will notice is different languages fluctuate in that. So the overall number tends to be pretty solid, but the fluctuations in language have changed over time. And so, for example, you look at the DLI program at Canyon Crest and Timpanogos, has increased over time, whereas Wasatch's DLI program has declined, but slightly. Like now, when you compare it to how it was many years, many eons ago before I was here, I know that Wasatch was close to 1,000 students, and it was quite a bit more intense. We haven't been at that level for quite some time, so.
And at one point, they were allowing as many Chinese classes as people wanted to enroll for.
Yes.
And then the change is because the district set a cap. That we're only going to have 2.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So for every language, we put a cap of 60 students at each grade level. You'll notice there are a couple of instances where Timpanogos will go over that number because it's a multilingual student that's coming in, and they're making an exception in that particular instance. So that's where you get a cohort of 60 per school, per language, per grade level. If that makes sense.
Wendy, this might be the place to add this, and you can say no, we'll talk about this later. With these numbers and the steady enrollment, more or less, I have received anecdotal information from parents at some of our schools that they wouldn't necessarily choose DLI, but they enroll in DLI because they do not want to enroll in the English side. So I think these numbers may reflect that a little bit.
Yep, I would agree.
Some of it, and I don't even know how to really capture all the numbers for that, but that's been told me multiple times over the last couple of weeks.
You will see that in some of the survey comments that came in. It was very hard to capture that as specific numbers, and we'll talk about that when I do a little summary of some of the kind of the trends of the comments that came out.
Thank you.
You bet.
Can I
Please.
ask a question about this particular table? I had a parent that asked me, well, what are the wait list numbers? Is there a wait list for every single language and every single year?
I don't have the answer to that, but I don't feel like that's the case. So you'll notice that most of the time, so like if I'm looking at this number, and if I've got first graders at 56, I'm not gonna have a wait list.
Right, because there's 4 spots.
So there's no wait list, no wait list, no wait list. Could be a wait list, no wait list. So typically when you're looking at that trend, there hasn't been, unless you're seeing 60 consistently across the board. I think when DLI was first being rolled out, I do think that was much more common than what it is now. Go ahead, Jared. Yes, I do think Timpanogos, especially when you're looking at their increase in numbers, that would be the case.
So if there is a wait list, so say Timpanogos, this is the end of their first grade year, were 3 kids approached to say, oh, do you want to do DLI next year? Because you're on the wait list.
Great question. Go ahead, Jason.
So the reason why I say not necessarily as far as a wait list is because when parents apply to get their students first into the program, they actually often apply for multiple languages. And when it opens for them to go to a language, they accept that. Usually they have a preference that they'd like to get in. And when that offer comes, then they drop out and pull out of any other program that they may have signed up for. And so it throws off this ability to say there's really a true wait list, because some of the parents in there are very specifically looking for a specific language. And they want DLI generally, but they have a specific language they want to be in overall.
So like if they're in the Chinese program, but they really want to be in the Spanish program, if something opens up in Spanish, they're going to move.
Yeah, yes. And it's usually in that wait time of all of them being accepted into the, because during that time frame, you've got kids moving in and out of the district, you've got all kinds of things that then cause openings in that program. And yes, they could have been accepted to the Chinese program, but they wanted the Spanish, so then as soon as that opening comes, they move.
Now, I also want to provide some clarification here. Part of the reason why you wouldn't necessarily do that at the end of first grade is because now that student is behind in terms of first grade. So traditionally in the state model, we have not allowed a student to add or become part of DLI once they have to enter in their first grade year. That actually has caused, and you'll see that in the comments on the DLI survey, that they'll say, I'm only not in DLI because we moved here when my child was in the 3rd grade and they were told no, and I didn't want him to go to a DLI school then, so then I permitted, I did school choice and went to a different school. The exception to that may be Timpanogos because it doesn't follow the state model. And Jamie, the principal at Lakeview, has allowed some students, and I got this number today, because there was a question about how many students is she bringing in. And she said from 2nd to 3rd grade, she adds anywhere from 5 to 10 kids per year. For 4th to 6th grade, it's only 3 to 5 kids per year because it gets harder to catch up in the language. But she said at Lakeview, one of the things that they do is they treat it as if it's sort of like a student who's coming in speaking, like a multilingual student. And so there has been a question of, can we treat our DLI programs more like that so it isn't just an entry point at 1st grade? And the answer, in my opinion, would be yes. We just need to get our principals and our teachers on board and make sure that they have the right support. And I'm sorry, Lisa, you had a question.
No, that's exactly what I was going to ask about.
Does this impact, like you're doing it this way there, because they are following the state model more or less, that isn't the state model? Is it just a directive from the state that that's how it should? Is it, or is it a hard and fast rule? You know what I mean?
It's so interesting that you should ask that. So there are assurances that you have to sign off on that you, in order to receive funding for DLA. Jamie, because she was formerly really involved at the state level with Portuguese, she feels like she has good exceptions to that. I don't get the sense that we would be shut down as a result. I feel like DLI at the state is becoming a lot more flexible, particularly in Spanish and Portuguese. I feel like there seems to be more from the state, a more rigid model coming from French and Chinese. We just need to work with our teachers in that respect. And I'll talk more about, there's been some major changes with DLI just in the last week. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit more.
So then, do we need to make it a district policy to allow students to go
it might
after
be,
1st grade?
Depending on how you want to go with DLI, I think that would be, I think that's something that we've seen could be super helpful. So, these are our projected enrollments by school for 26-27. Notice our total number is going up. It is representing about 24% of our total elementary enrollment. So this isn't like 8%. You know, this is a quarter of our elementary kids. Now I will say we do have some concerns about incoming numbers. You'll notice Lakeview up there at 28. That makes me concerned, and it makes me a little concerned at Wasatch at 48. So at what point do those numbers, should those numbers be concerning to us, and at what point do we not worry about it? Like, what should that look like?
What's the threshold that we?
Yeah, what is the threshold? Is there a threshold? And if there is, what should it be? Okay. Then you go to the next page. This will be page 4. We've had some questions about, I want to thank Devin for putting this together because I had no idea how to pull these numbers.
This was helpful.
So this helps you to see. So let me kind of explain how to read this. So this shows us that in DLI, we have 313 students at Canyon Crest that are in DLI, 258, 304, so you can see each of those numbers. This is how many students live in Canyon Crest boundaries that choose DLI Spanish. This is how many kids live in Edgemont boundaries that choose DLI French, so on and so forth. So you can see those numbers coming across. This is how many kids are coming outside of the district, specifically for DLI. Now, I need you to understand something, and I think it says this at the bottom of this page here, because this was a really important thing that Jared actually brought up. So notice that this is the 4th bullet point on page 4. 473 elementary students are coming to Provo from out of district to our elementary schools, and 177 total are coming for DLI. So it's important to note that we have a sizable number of elementary kids that are coming in from outside the district, not for DLI. So I think we have some assumptions about what's happening there. But this just shows you how many kids are coming in from out of the area. Wasatch actually is our school that has the most in boundary students that live within Wasatch's boundaries that are choosing DLI Chinese. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're looking through that.
Okay, Crest is more.
Yeah.
As a
155.
percentage of
No,
the
as the
enrollment?
total enrollment. So,
Because Lakeview says 184.
okay. So what I'm looking at is you have a total of 313 students at Canyon Crest. Only 155 live in the boundary. So of that,
Oh, percent.
yeah, it's the percent that's in DLI.
In
Yes,
DLI.
yes. Sorry, thank you.
You're good.
See, things are inside my brain and they don't always come out correctly. Okay, next one is current secondary DLI enrollment. This is a little bit trickier to pull, but we can see some different things that are happening here. So you'll notice that Spanish in the Provo High feeder has low numbers because the Bridge program it's only in its second year. So I think it's really important to remember that because Timpanogos was technically not following the state model, and I'm not saying that with any kind of trying to be disparaging or anything, that was something that was kind of in people's minds. It doesn't matter. Like, let them move through DLI.
Can I add to this? Because I've been researching. Timpanogos was the first DLI program in the district, like 10
Yes,
years before
like-
the others. It was 1999, and it was Jamie's document. It was specifically to help the Spanish-speaking population that
Yes.
is very concentrated in the area. And then 10 years later is when the state decided to really support DLI programs, and that's when you see Wasatch, Edgemont, and the Canyon
Oh,
Crest come aboard
excellent.
in Lakeview. So that was helpful for me to just understand how we got here.
Yes, no, that's great. Thank you for adding that. So what's happening now is you will start to see, so if you notice those 7th and 8th graders, we're getting a larger number. There tended to be not a lot of communication coming out of Timpanogos Elementary about you can actually continue this in middle school. That communication was not really clear. And I think those principals are doing a much better job of coordinating to make sure that those Spanish DLI students understand that they can continue in the secondary level. So I want you to just kind of keep that in mind as you look at that. You can see you have your Portuguese numbers there. Notice the high school totals. So I broke it out by grade level, then there's a middle school total and a high school total, and then total number of students in secondary. And a couple of things that I want you to pay attention to. If you take those secondary numbers and you look at this, you have 50% of your DLI cohorts that are finishing all the way through high school. 50%. So you're usually having between 30 and 35 students in each language, for the most part, like on average, that are actually finishing all the way through 12th grade. So I think that's important to kind of keep in mind.
Is that a good number?
Yeah.
I think that's actually really
If
good.
you think in relation to all
Yeah,
the students.
I actually think that's quite good. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, because when I looked at the 6th grade class, for example, in the Spanish, what you would presume was sort of the Spanish feeder, I think it went from like 40 to 30 something. So there is an attrition, I think, that happens
Yeah.
between 6th grade going into that secondary track. But it
Absolutely.
looks to me like if someone chooses to start that secondary track,
They stay
most of,
most of
I
them
mean,
will stay.
it's a smaller percentage, I think, of those who start secondary, or I mean, a greater percentage of those students who finish, if that makes sense.
Yes,
Because you're taking all of these students into account.
that's exactly. I think that's
So,
an excellent point.
You know, I think that's actually significant.
I think the other thing I would also point out is that it puts more strain on the students that are at Shoreline to pursue DLI because they have a 7-period day rather than a 5x5 schedule. And so you're not giving up quite the number of electives. If you're going to Centennial for Chinese, French, or Spanish, there is an inequity that's coming. You're giving up more if you're attending Shoreline, and so you'll see that.
And firsthand experience, kids are homeschooling certain subjects so that they can continue
Yes,
to DLI.
yes,
And that's, yeah, that's.
Yes. And
That's
or it's like I want to do band and I want to do this and I want to do this, and so then I'm just trying to figure
Well, in
all of that
historical
out.
perspective there, when I was PTA president at Centennial, as these first groups of DLI students were coming through, and this, in fact, I came in on their 2nd year, this is what was happening, and so people were homeschooling even significant core subjects because by state law, in this
'Cause there's
middle
two
school,
DLA
you know what I mean?
classes.
You
Yes,
can't really
that's
say
correct.
you have to. So there were a lot of students doing those things at home that really need a qualified teacher for core subjects in order to make sure they still kept music and theater, arts, and these other things, and their language at school. And so I think that is part of why that 5x5 schedule, I know it presents other challenges, but a big part of that decision was so that these students would still be taking math and science and English language arts at school.
I think that's an excellent point. And so that's why I do think you're also seeing a little bit of a discrepancy also in the numbers between, say, Portuguese versus Chinese, French and Spanish. You need to recognize that those are different feeders, and those middle schools are on different schedules. Once they get to high school, kids kind of figure out how to maneuver their schedule and make it work. I mean, we have only 70% of our kids in 12th grade that actually have a full schedule anyway. So they figure there's room in their schedule to make this work. So.
Wendy, I've got two questions. So first of all, you said we previously hadn't been good about tracking individual students. So I'm wondering, with our secondary data, the way we figured out, are these for sure just DLI students, or some of these students who might be taking the AP class but didn't do DLI?
Yep, that's correct. Some of them might be taking the AP class, but because they go through Bridge and because they pass that, then they get categorized in that way. So they might not have come through the elementary system. They might have just passed AP Spanish. Most students that are going to pass that in 9th grade, though, are either going to be a native Spanish speaker, or they're going to have gone through
Right,
DLI.
so if we're saying like 12th grade, then we're talking about the Bridge class, not the AP class.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So 9th grade, you're going to take your AP class unless you're in Chinese or French. Some of those students will take that in 10th grade, so they'll do 2 years to move in that direction. But for sure, 11th and 12th grade, they're in the 3,000 level courses at the
And
high
then
school.
the second thing, just for having this discussion, I heard that our middle school principals are talking about figuring out what their bell schedule is going to be like. Are they both going to be on a 7 period? Are they going to do a block? And I think this would be important if they're not already discussing this aspect of it.
They're very,
They
they're very
Okay.
Yeah, this is a piece that has to come into all of that.
Yeah, if we've got 25% of our students.
Yeah. Please, Gina.
So if we've got like 6 and 4 on the Spanish feeder, is that saying that they have classes with 6 and 4 people in it?
No,
Okay.
usually they'll double block them.
Okay.
So, yep. Go ahead, Emily, you had a question.
Like, kind of along the lines of Gina, but so what are the teachers that, let's say they teach French at Timpview? How many class periods
Oh,
are
I'm
they
gonna get to
teaching?
that. Oh, I'm gonna get to that. Here we go. Oh, I love it when I've like anticipated your questions. I was very happy. Okay, these are our projected enrollments for 2026, 2027. We do have a few caveats to this, so just a couple of things. One, these are projected. They present estimates. Not all secondary schools have completed all of their registration process. Nor have they finalized their master schedules. So we don't know what conflicts might exist within the schedule. Timpview's a little farther along in the development of their master schedule than some of our other secondary schools. Notice that our secondary DLI enrollment has increased over last year by 50 students across all language programs. And we are going to see that with, I think we are starting, you'll notice we're starting to get more robust numbers in Spanish in that Shoreline feeder program, so that's helping. However, concern exists, like if you see those levels where you start to see dips in the numbers of students at elementary in particular languages, obviously that'll trickle up at some point and have an impact at the secondary level. This is our DLI completion by language. This is one of the things that Doug presented back in December, so I just pulled this back in and just talks about, this was last year's completion numbers. But notice in that right column, total number of students served district-wide and secondary DLI by program includes the percentage of the beginning of the cohort. So 33% of the students finished all the way through in Spanish. In French, it was 37.5%, Chinese over 50%, and Portuguese over 50%. Are
So this
actually
is
finishing.
1st through 12th.
Yes.
Okay.
Or first through bridge.
Yes, first year bridge, yes. And bridge has up to 3 classes that you can take. They will count it as completing if you just take just one. Yes.
So is bridge, is that 1 year post AP?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a 3,000 level language class.
Okay.
We have special permission from the universities to offer it at that 3,000 level. So it puts them, I think it's only 9 credits short. If they did all 3 years of bridge, they would be 9 credits short of a minor in the language. I just want to make sure that I have the question for, I feel like I have missed something that was important that I didn't put in here. And it was about what the teachers are teaching. I don't think I stuck it in here. So it's in this part. Never mind. I did answer it. Okay, so now let's talk about the cost of DLI programs. And this kind of goes to Emily's question. Why does this cost more?
Yes.
So this is what happens. When you get a number of students, and Devin's going to pipe in at any point in time, we may have to supplement a school with additional FTE. So, for example, if I'm at Edgemont and I have 90 students at a grade level, I could technically run that with 2 teachers. I wouldn't love to run it with 2 teachers, or excuse me, not 90. You're like 45 kids in the class. No, 3 teachers, right? However, once I have DLI stuck in there, right? So I'm gonna have to have 2 teachers at every single grade level for DLI, because you have a language side teacher and you have the English side of the teacher. So you have 2 teachers at every grade level. Then I have to look at, okay, who's not in DLI and what does that look like? So how many students are left? So if I have, let's say, for example, 90 students and 60 of those, or let's even say 50 of those are in DLI, that means I'm left with 40 on the non-DLI side. Now I have to have 4 teachers to cover that grade level, whereas if I didn't have DLI at that school, I would only have to have 3. I could split that out. So that's why DLI ends up costing more money, is because you have to have those 2 teachers at every single grade level, regardless of the number of students. If I have 20 students in a cohort, I have to split that cohort in half, and I have 10 and 10. Now, I don't have any cohorts that are that small. I don't want to suggest that. But what it does do then is you are seeing, in some cases, where you have some classes that are on the non-DLI side that are really small. So this is the example that gets used, for example, at Wasatch and at Canyon Crest. We do have some grade levels where you only have 1 on the non-DLI side, and that class is small. What's our number in first grade at Canyon Crest? It's
8.
like 11 or something?
8.
So I have 8 students sitting with 1 teacher on the non-DLI side, and they're going to follow that cohort with the same 8 students. Jared, you wanted to add
The
something,
bigger
please?
challenge is when you have 35 or 40.
Yes.
And then you run 2 inefficient sections.
That's
on the
exactly
traditional
right.
side.
Yeah, that actually creates a lot of stress as well. Lisa, go
Well,
ahead.
and I was just going to restate for the public that when we assign those FTE, it's 27.5 students per FTE. That's how those allocations are made in our budget. So when you get down to below 20 in a class, that's why.
You're subsidizing.
Yeah, we're
Subsidizing
subsidizing to run the program.
Yeah.
And FTE means full-time
Full-time equivalent.
So
So just
it's
a teacher.
Sorry.
It's just a teacher.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, one of the things that we need to recognize is that we subsidize even non-DLI in that way. So for example, if I end up with 38 in a grade level, I'm going to split those 38 students into 2 classes, and I'm going to run 2 classes of 19, right? So that's not my 27.5. So I am subsidizing a little bit in that respect. And that's where, when we don't have really robust numbers at every grade level, it actually is costing us more money as a district to funnel that. So what I did was I took the amount that we pay for a first-year teacher. I know every first-year teacher is going to be like, I do not make $110,000. I know you don't. That's what you cost us. With all of the benefits and everything, that is the cost to the district of a first-year teacher is $110,000. So I just use that. That's the cheapest teacher I can buy. So if I'm looking at, in Canyon Crest, we had to subsidize that we had to add 2.5 FTE to help support. That's costing us an additional $275,000. Now, my out-of-district students are bringing in what we call WPUs, so weighted pupil unit. They come with funding with them. They don't come with property tax money with them, but they do come with that funding. So we put in the amount, $46.74 is what they earned last year. This is what we got for students. It's now higher than that for this following year. So if you multiply that by 32, then I'm generating, Canyon Crest is generating with those out-of-district students almost $150,000. But when I look at what that does is it means it's costing me $125,000. Even with those out-of-district students that are coming, we're paying more money into that school. And then what I did was I just divided that by the total number of students to just give you some perspective as to the per student cost. When you look at Edgemont, notice Edgemont and Wasatch, we had to add 4 FTE into those two schools. So 8 FTE between those two schools. These are their out-of-district numbers. And so then when I look at this, I've got Edgemont that's costing me an extra $225,000, and I got Wasatch that's costing an extra $351,000. Notice Timpanogos, same thing. We did add 3 FTE there. This is not their equity FTE that they get for being a highly impacted school. This is just what we had to go in and add for DLI. So also costing us additional money. Notice this though. Lakeview, we added 1. This is how many students are coming out of district, and I netted some money as a result. This speaks to that when you have a school that is approaching that 650 to 700 number, we can run a pretty efficient DLI school. It's when the numbers start going below that, even when I'm sitting at 616, it's hard to balance those numbers. And so that's why you'll hear Jamie talk about, she's the principal at Lakeview Elementary, she'll say, if you can get this number above 650, you can actually run, she's got 4 classes per grade level for most of them. I think there is 1 grade level, but kindergarten now. But she has got those, so she has 4 classes, and so you've got the 2 on the DLI side, but I have 2 that are on the non-DLI side, which is helpful because now I've got some flexibility and just teachers and the kids are not running through those. We can mix them up each year, right? And so that helps. So I hope that helps a little bit, Emily, to explain.
That does. Let's just say though, like Timpanogos was at 660, but their number of out of district stayed about the same. I mean, I guess I could do that math, but is the net Lakeview netting some money? It seems to be that 57. Right?
It's because Portuguese is such because we are the only district of down here
So
that offers Portuguese. Whereas Nebo offers Spanish, Alpine offers Spanish.
And so if we just did 660 with our in-boundary students, we would still probably wouldn't be captured. Well, no, yeah.
You wouldn't capture quite this amount because it's also based on this number of how many you're bringing in, right?
Well,
but you're still bringing in WPU
That's true.
for your
That's
kiddo.
true. That's true.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say,
that's-
they're also right on the edge of another school district, so it's easy for people to
That's
want
right.
to choice into it,
That's
right?
right.
As opposed to like Wasatch is kind of hard to get to
Yeah.
if you're not already in the district.
Yeah. Question about, so let's say we had 27 kids that wanted to do DLI. I know we have more than that. Would we just have 1 teacher or we'd still have to have 2?
You have to have 2.
You have to have
You have
two.
to have an English.
Because the state says we have to have
That's
2.
one of
Because
the
you have to,
problems.
because you
Yeah.
do either ELA instruction in the target language,
Uh-huh.
or you do math instruction in the target language, depends on your grade level, and then you swap. So you're swapping between the 2 teachers.
So both teachers have to be full-time, and it
Yep.
doesn't matter how many necessarily are in that class.
You couldn't have a bilingual teacher do both?
It gets tricky because the assurance is
states that your other teacher can't speak English in front of the
At
students.
all. They're not supposed to at all.
But if we didn't follow the state model, we could do it that way.
That's how
Yeah.
teacher always does.
That's-
Yes.
You would lose some funding as a result of that.
Okay.
And will we get that funding? Is it in, sorry, I was working today,
No,
so I
you're
didn't
okay.
read through this all, but will you tell us in this presentation process the funding that does come in from being in the state model?
I'm gonna ask Devin to pull that because the
Okay.
number that I got today was that, and I don't know if this is an
Okay.
accurate number, but they said we get an additional $50 per student if we could meet all the assurances of the state model. I don't
And
know
it's
what
mostly
you.
just supply money. So the DLI funding has been around 100,000 a year for
So
some.
that would be a cost benefit analysis we could
Yes.
do quickly, right? Depending on how the conversation goes, around staying in the state model,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because even looking at Lakeview's numbers, they're like one class away. If they have some smaller class
Yeah, they
sizes,
do.
right? And so I just think it could end up becoming expensive even there.
Yes.
So looking at that state model might help us out.
And I think you brought up a really important, please go ahead, Jared.
It's important to recognize the state does not fund the teacher. They
Right.
fund for materials and support.
Okay.
That's such a small amount.
That's
I
what
think
I
there's a
wanted.
misunderstanding that the state funds the teachers for this. and
Yeah.
they don't.
Thank you.
That's correct. And that reminds me, when we talk about how the state support has changed, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that kind of gives you a little bit of a rundown at the elementary level. Now, this is to Emily's question, what are we doing with these teachers that are teaching in DLI? So at Provo High, I have a full FTE that's dedicated, but they're only teaching 122 students. So when you look at a typical high school, you teach 6 periods, and let's say I teach 30 students per class period, which you're lucky if you're teaching 30 students per class period. Chrissy's like, I teach 200 every day, every class period. Anyway, sorry. But those class sizes are really small. So then if I'm going to start putting that in the perspective of cost per student, that does get really expensive. Now I will say Provo High's Portuguese teacher, she actually teaches this only across 5 class periods. She actually gets an additional prep period where she goes in and she's responsible for all of the multilingual testing and tracking of multilingual student records, and so she supports, and they have over 300 students that they're screening and testing constantly. So yes, but I would also say she's a tremendous support across the board in multilingual in a multilingual situation. And Chinese, we have 1.125. I believe there's an ELD section that's English language development, so help support other students as well. And so that's why you're seeing that cost a little bit higher there. So, and we have Spanish as well. So you just notice that, you know, if you don't have those full sections, you're dealing with a section of 20 students, it is costing us more money, and particularly at the secondary level. And this is also a concern that I have heard from parents. They just say, I feel like there are fewer language opportunities at the high school level because most of the languages are tied specifically to DLI, and so it limits what I'm available to take. Please,
Well, I
Jennifer.
was gonna ask, in this total students, is this just total DLI? Because
Yes.
I'm sure we need to teach other Spanish classes at the high schools.
Yep.
So can a DLI teacher take some of those periods?
They can't take it in, so yes, so like if I have a full FTE here, they may only be teaching 4 or 5, and so they're teaching this 122, and so yes, they can pull in
So that
another
changes
period,
that
another class
number.
period, and then it would change that number.
Yeah, but if we don't have any other Chinese class, if there's not an entry-level Chinese class, then that's all.
Spanish is a lot easier to handle than like Chinese. I'm not gonna I don't know, maybe I
They
would
used
come
to
in as a
have
9th
it.
grader and take Chinese
Two of
one,
my
right?
kids did that.
Yeah.
They used to have
But
it.
they only have so many elective times, so they can do, yeah.
Or
so
they
they
stopped
stop
I think
doing
they
as many.
eliminated it because of finding a teacher. That was my understanding, because they did have it as just a language election at the secondary level.
I
So
know
the
the middle
Chinese-
school stopped doing as much with the non-DLI, just because That's right. They can only have
So
so many
there's
teachers.
only one Spanish teacher at Provo High.
No, there's only one Spanish DLI teacher at Provo High.
So
A
how many
regular
Spanish teachers are there
I
at
don't know.
Provo
I
High?
think there's two.
Jared says
There's
there's
been
two.
two for a number of years.
Okay. 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 I think I have
And
gone
for the
through all
public
those.
watching, all this information is on Board Book. So if they go find the agenda on our website, you can look at all of this.
So then if you, I don't have any more charts, but if you go to page 10 in this document, it just talks about, there's just a link to the summary of the DLI surveys. We surveyed parents that were in the DLI programs as well as parents that were in the non-DLI programs. Our parents that are in DLI feel very positive about the program. They feel they have tremendous love of the program, and they will fight for these programs and these opportunities for students. That being said, the students that are on the non-DLI side, there are reports of concerns about what that looks like, or even parents have shifted them to other schools. They have choiced to other schools where DLI is not prevalent. USBE, so we met with the state superintendent these last 2 days. She talked a little bit about some of the changes that are coming from state support for DLI. So one of the things that happens is there's about $8 million was what she stated that goes out to school districts to support DLI. This is this number that comes in to support supplies and different things. And there's approximately $500,000 that's reserved for the state office alone. However, they've had tremendous numbers of coaches and individuals that go out and support the schools in DLI. What we learned today is that most of those are being funded through districts. So for example, Canyon's district pays for their Spanish director as well as some of the coaches for DLI Spanish, and the state is only paying a fraction of that salary. And so what's happening is there's this inequity that's occurring across the state in terms of where you're located and what kind of support you have. So the state superintendent is asking for more of that money from the schools to be redirected to the state office so that they oversee those coaches and can make sure that there's equitable distribution of what that support looks like across those languages. And so we don't know what that's going to look like, but there's no indication that the state is changing its mind about dual language immersion. But they're going from a staffing support of over 20, I think, that were supporting DLI across the state, to projecting that that might be fewer than 10. And so that support is going to change. They've talked about the conference that they do. It's called the Audi conference for DLI teachers, that they need to change the format and what that might look like. They will continue to support districts with finding candidates and with J1 visas. They don't pay for the visas, but they pay to help us get through all of the paperwork. They have a person that helps us with that process. Jason, you might speak more to the visa part.
Yeah, it's interesting because again, like Timpanogos cannot participate in that. So
Yeah.
they do not get the help of any state-sponsored teachers. And it's a little tricky in certain languages as to whether or not you can get those teachers here on the J1. So.
So if you were to move from a state model, not having that support to help,
Yes.
that would be a downside.
Yeah, it
Yes.
makes it
That's
very
not
tricky.
necessarily.
Yeah.
How much are we seeing support of the DLI instructional coach?
It's a great question. So that's something
Yeah,
I wanna ask Judy and Doug and Sarah about. Is I do feel like there's probably more than I'm even aware of that is happening, but I don't know. I don't know. So when the state superintendent was asking us, well, what do you want this support to look like? I'm like, time out. I do not want to answer. I want to go back and talk with her team to figure out what's going to be the best in that way. So we've been. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, Melanie had sent the email, so I just thought maybe we should
Oh, yeah.
answer some of these. So she's asking, is DLI creating unintended segregation? I think in some ways we can probably answer that, but meaning how many ML, IEP, 504 behavior students, fee waivers are doing DLI versus non-DLI?
I have ML numbers of that. That would be pretty easy to get. I have SPED numbers of that. We have had that presented.
It's in Doug's presentation.
Yeah, it's in Doug's presentation, so it
Okay.
should be in the DLI folder.
Okay,
Fee waivers are harder. That's harder to
Yeah.
find that information.
okay. And then she asked, how much money would we save if by eliminating one program?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about that
Okay.
in just a minute. We've also had questions about, do we create a magnet site for DLI?
Yeah.
I think when we look at the number of elementary students that we have over 1,500, I don't have a single site that can house 1,500 elementary students, so it would have to be at least 2 sites if you were going to do something like that and you would combine 2 different programs. The other question that you have is, and I put this on here under magnet sites, this is on page 11. Combining 2 languages at a school does address the concerns that have been brought forth by parents of non-DLI students where they feel like their students have been treated differently. But because all students are involved in DLI, there is kind of this unified culture of appreciation for bilingualism. It would mean, however, when you do that, that then if a student is living within that school's boundary and they do not want to participate in DLI, you would have to have a commitment as a district to then transport that student to a school that isn't their neighborhood school so that they would have connection to that. So that would be a cost that would be associated with that.
Well, or we redraw the boundaries so that those magnet programs aren't considered anybody's neighborhood school.
Yes, you could do that.
And then anyone who lives outside of the walking distance of their assigned
That's
school
correct.
would definitely, which would increase how many people would be further from their neighborhood school.
And one con we've heard, just because it's on the top of my mind, is that then families might have kids, again, at different schools.
At different
right?
schools, yes,
If
that's
they
true.
choose
Yeah.
a DLI program.
Yeah. We would have to pull, I would have to pull the numbers of how many
Yeah.
students that would actually impact. I don't know, but that definitely does limit, or it just creates.
Do families really? One kid's doing
Yeah.
Spanish
Yes.
and one
Because
kid's
especially
doing
if you move
Chinese?
here.
No,
yes,
one kid's doing
English
Spanish and
only.
one is not.
English only and language.
Okay, I was gonna say,
That's it.
I don't think, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think something to think about in your team, Wendy can speak, maybe think about this better than I can, is I know that, like, I'm thinking about at Wasatch, sometimes the collaboration just with the Chinese and the English side, when they're doing their pullouts, and I think it's really constrained and tricky, and I'm trying to think that
Yes.
through with 2 languages. You would just have like the 2 teachers for each language in that grade. Like when they're doing, their combined interventions, their win time, all those pieces, the tier 2 stuff. But that's not to be answered at this point. I think those are considerations I'm thinking of, those like the day-to-day things happening within the school building. Some of those challenges that we still see right now with the English side and this language side would still be there with just 2 different languages.
Yes,
Because you still are 2 different tracks.
and you would have individuals that would want only the English side teachers to be delivering interventions.
And that's
So-
what, yes, and that's become a point of, it's hard, because it's
become
like
a point of conflict.
more work and it's an extra responsibility, and not everyone's kind of contributing.
And if you're looking at the new literacy legislation that's going into effect, that starts with kindergarten next year, once those students hit 1st grade, if you follow the state model with DLI, all of that burden will fall on the English side teacher only for individualized reading plans.
And I have heard these concerns from teachers.
Okay.
So that
They
would be
model
something,
currently,
that would be
so.
something that I would be concerned about, is what kind of lift does that create for the English side teacher, or do we have to say, we're not following the state model, and it doesn't matter, you are going to be responsible for this piece of it. So there's some different things, logistical things that we have to continue to work through.
That kind of goes along with Melanie's question. Are we seeing any students in DLI that are not at grade level in their English?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have that number specifically, but we can pull the academic data for you.
Yeah, you can go to high school.
I don't think that combining two languages at a single site, there's some thought, and I will say I had this thought as well, as if you were to combine two languages at a single site, then the idea is that maybe that English site only teacher, if you had smaller cohorts,
Yeah.
you could combine them into that English side of a class. So you would have, like, let's say you did, Chinese and Portuguese at a school, right? Then I could have the Chinese teacher, the Portuguese teacher, and maybe those cohorts are smaller, and then you'd have one English teacher. I don't know how that scheduling would work, and I worry about what that might look like, but there are some things that could create some efficiencies there. I don't expect that it would save more than probably 2 FTE total across the school. When you're looking at that, just based on, because our kids don't come in these perfect packages of 27.5 students, at each grade, in each cohort, they come at odd numbers, which is how they should, so.
Wendy, I know you just were at a superintendent's meeting for a few days. Have you gotten any input from other districts of how they've addressed DLI in their district? Like, are there best practices we can learn from, or maybe not best practices of theirs that we can learn from as we're considering what to do?
I think there's concern from several districts that are similar to our size. I was talking with the superintendent of Park City, and they fund students of $28,000 a kid. And they have issues with the fact that they can't sustain a large enough class size on the non-DLI side, and it's creating conflicts in their schools because of the enrollment concerns that they have. And so it's not just a Provo issue that's happening. I will say we're kind of stuck in this kind of two sides of this. I really do believe Provo is a destination district because we have all of these different options. But when you look at the districts that are our size, they only have one language. So the other districts that have 4 languages have over 50,000 students in them. So they're much larger than we are, and so that's a little bit, I shouldn't say 40,000. I think Canyons has 4 languages and they're at like 35,000, so I should be more accurate in that. So,
But to add on to that, I mean, we are a destination district, but really only 177 kids are coming into our district for DLI, right?
At the elementary level.
At the elementary level.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
That's not that many compared to the 12,500 or whatever we have. Like, that's small numbers in my, I don't know. I mean, it's numbers, but it's 177 is not that many.
But I think you also need to look at the perspective of that you have 1,500 students whose parents really feel like DLI is benefiting their kid, and that is one of the things that they love about being here in Provo. So I think that's an important thing to consider as well.
Right.
So
I had a question. Meg, you looked at Timpanogos. Did they ever have the same problem that Wasatch did with, like, 4 classes of Spanish DLI? Like,
Oh, like the high numbers, like.
yeah.
No, I don't think so.
The school's never been big enough to handle that many.
2 sections.
Yeah, the old Wasatch.
Chinese
Just
that
2
allow for
teachers?
reading,
Mm-hmm.
right.
They never had to limit it like at Wasatch.
There was never a
Never been
district
to.
like kind of putting a cap.
Right.
They didn't warrant it like that.
One question I have just into the future that I think would be also good to, when we're trying to figure out what is the cost for a DLI versus a non-DLI student, I'm really grateful for how quickly you put a lot of data together for us. I would be curious then, because you were saying there are schools, obviously, that are not DLI students where we, outside of just that equity FTE, are sometimes having to say, oh, this is the size of a 2nd grade cohort, so we're going to have to fund an extra FTE there. Just so that we're really comparing as closely as we can,
Yeah.
actual apples to apples. Look at how many non-DLI schools are also receiving additional FTE due to just enrollment sizes per grade.
Yes.
I don't know, just in the future as we're looking at that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and there are some, but
Yeah.
not quite at the same level. But
No,
there are
I
some.
believe that, but I just think that would be helpful then to include that data.
I think it's also important to recognize that we don't, even though we get this amount of money per kid, we don't spend the same amount of money
Yeah.
per kid, right? Like, we know that there are students that have disabilities, we know that there are students who are multilingual learners, we know that there are students who are gifted, we know that there are students who are in DLI, and there is additional funding that goes across that. So I do get a little concerned about, I don't want us to make decisions just based on exclusively the cost of a student. Because when you start looking at the cost of a student with a disability costs a lot more to educate than a student who doesn't have a disability. And I feel like we set ourselves up to be like, well, why are we spending all, and it's like, no, this is what we have to do. This is the right thing to do. So I do want us to be a little conscientious about really looking at what the benefits are producing for the student in the long run.
I think that goes to the last part of your document. I don't know if you want to pull that up, but the additional considerations is, you know, we need to decide as a board, what are we going to look at? First of all, what are we looking for, right? Like, is it the quality of education for the DLI students, everybody, right? How do we determine that? And then what factors are we prioritizing? And I know as a board, we're even different on that. The cost is more important than some of the other things, right? And vice versa for some of us. But we do need to get to a point where we kind of set some, I don't think metrics are the right word, but priorities, yeah.
Guidelines and what values.
And then we have to start moving forward to, or else we're just gonna keep talking about this for the next 5 years and get nowhere with it, right? So
The other piece, when you're looking at a per student expenditure with the schools, there are some schools who have not had a teacher turnover in years. So you have some schools that are more expensive just because of the number of teachers that have been there for a long time, and other schools that have,
Because they're having more.
they have more turnover, or they had a lot of people
Interns.
retire. They use interns, so you can't really use a per student amount to even look at it. It really becomes way more qualitative than quantitative information when you're looking at it.
You would almost just have to say, we're just gonna create an average amount for every teacher and then just
Kind of
apply
like,
that,
yeah.
you know, which is what I was trying to do there. To just,
Just
and
in
hope it
general.
evens it out in general, so. Did you have a question, Emily?
Not really. I just feel like, for me, after going to Canyon Crest, closing a school sounds so much more heartbreaking than taking away a DLI program. To me, in my mind, I'm like, let's cut some programs before we say, we're gonna cut your neighborhood school and your neighborhood school. We may still have to do that, but in my mind, cutting a program that could save us money seems more, it's an easier pill to swallow. And I think also looking at DLI in a way of saying, is this actually producing what we are intending to produce? And are we, the inequity that we're creating, we've got to account for that. And we're kind of like not, in my mind.
So
I mean, we are, but we haven't been, right? The past, it's something we hear about, but we're not really addressing, like, what does that actually look like for a kid that's not in the DLI program? And
In those.
yeah, so.
go ahead, Megan, then I want to respond to
You wanna go
Emily's.
first?
Well, are you responding to Emily?
Kind of. Or
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
piggyback.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I think about what my goals are outside of, cost, it is more and more, since I've been on the board, this is my 3rd year, the concerns of our non-DLI students in our schools and the inequities they experience. I know even talking to a former teacher at Timpanogos, that was happening there. Like, that just, I just don't think that I, moving forward in good faith, can be okay with that, and the experiences of even some of the teachers and on the ground, what it's like, the load for some of these teachers on the English only side, that they feel like they are carrying. And for me, those are what I would like to address in doing any restructuring, because that does seem to be a problem.
Like the school.
And I do think, I don't know, I brought this up at the beginning, some of our schools, these DLI numbers, and I want to be clear, my kids have done DLI, I value DLI, I see the merits, I really love so many things about it, but I also am curious at some of our neighborhood schools that families, there's definitely some that are seeking it out, but they also are just choosing the DLI because they don't want to be in the English track. And that is part of that picture. And I just, that's something that I'm just thinking about. And that's been reported to me from parents at schools. So
Thank you for that. I do want to just respond, Emily, to what you said about cutting DLI versus closing a school. So I see it a little bit differently. I see these as two separate decisions because closing a DLI program does not necessarily highly impact the fact that we have declining enrollment. And we still have challenges in non-DLI schools of, like Wendy said, where we have to supplement extra FTE, or there, I know of several schools that have had like, okay, we have a teacher teach a second, third grade combo so that we can address that, because otherwise we would only have one class or two classes per grade level, right? And so for me, it is in both cases less about the budget and more about the education for all students involved. So the DLI, the non-DLI, the giving them the opportunities for the collaboration and for our teachers to collaborate. And that doesn't mean I want huge schools with tons and tons and tons of kids in them, but how can we best find that balance? And so I just want to share with the public, I don't think it's an either or. Like if we get rid of DLI, we don't have to look at
For sure.
consolidating schools.
I totally
Right.
get that.
Yeah. Lisa, and then I'm going to see if Gina and Terry and our board member students have anything to add, and then it will be about time to move on. So.
Just a couple of thoughts. Like, I would love us to have some clarity to give district leadership around what are our specific next questions. I feel like I'm often asking a question that, like, as soon as you put everything into one folder, I was like, and here are the answers. For example, the question raised around, are we providing what we hope we are with our DLI program? We had a whole committee spend a lot of time and do a lot of research, and that survey came out, and I felt like the evidence said yes, in fact, we are. Like, we are in fact measurably with data delivering what we want to be delivering with this program. So
And it aligns with our strategic plan
Right.
of the post-secondary outcomes
Yes.
significantly.
Yes,
I agree.
and I tried to look at our school just RISE data from the end of last year, and I compared two schools with a similar demographic and a similar enrollment. And you could not go in and say, in our non-DLI, in our English only math and science, do you know what I mean? Like, there's sometimes a narrative that says maybe our math and our science scores are lower because they're doing it in a foreign language, but that actually, the data is not necessarily there to say that. I think we actually are seeing academic advantages in the English side of all learning as well from that language learning and experience. So I think we do have some of that data. So I'd just like to be clear, like what would we be trying to accomplish by any adjustments in the model of this program. Mm-hmm. And then my second thing is this, I just wanted to articulate that I feel like we sat here last April, we got the results of our boundary and feasibility study. We looked at how we could be, their recommendations for efficiency of just our building usage, which could address some of our challenges. And you know, at the time, which was 1 year ago, we really believed as a board, at least that's my understanding, that we did not have a declining enrollment crisis. So we're 1 year later, and I'm not saying we don't necessarily have that, but to me that's one point. And I would be hesitant to say 1 point makes a line. Like, I see projections, and so I don't want to be blindsided, you know, a year or two down the road, but I would love to have the conversation pull into how do we know when we're at that point for real? Because even 2 months ago, as I looked at the language in the budget spreadsheet that we have, and I wrote down this quote that I thought was really informative for our practice here, and it said, under school closures comments in that spreadsheet that, by the way, so the public knows, was in everyone's inbox in January, highlighting that this could become a problem for us. It says, before we go down this road, we need to establish clear triggers that would have to be established to start the conversation, i.e. enrollment drops below a certain number, grade levels are starting to have to be combined at a certain, like, let's just decide what are those thresholds.
Yeah.
So that then, and then also with that, if we can come to agreement around that, then what would we use as, you know, and you presented some of this, like,
But what would we agree to use as our decision points then around identifying a target way to do that? So that's just a little bit of my thoughts on the topic of DLI and school enrollment. I did want to answer Melanie's question about what's the cost savings if you went down by one language. Remember that you're only it's gonna be basically $110,000, maybe $220,000, because you're just eliminating first grade. It will take you 6 years to get that program moved out of an elementary school, because we owe it to those parents to continue serving them throughout. So it is, I think, to Jennifer's point, this is not a budget question. This is about how are we providing the best educational opportunities for students and the equity that we need in place. And so I want us to be conscientious about that.
Gina or Terry, do you have anything to add, or Rachel or Bailey?
Let's start with Rachel and Bailey.
I think for me, just like, I kind of agree with Lisa, it's like we only are seeing a point, but I think the fact that, like we said, like our district, even though we're like a medium size, the fact that we offer 4, I feel like that's not something we should give up so easily, especially because, I don't know, I feel like our retention rates are pretty good as well, but that if I kind of go back to like closing a school, I think it's kind of inevitable, and that we know that our student population over the next probably decade will decrease, so that even if we push it off for a couple of years, it's still going to end up coming back. So that discussion is really important. I think it's worth considering having like a DLI like magnet school, because I do agree that we've been kind of ignoring the equity part. Like, even though I never was part of the DLI program, I've always heard like my peers kind of say like, oh yeah, like I was on the English side, so I was like left out of everything, and I felt like, and it's really sad, right? So I think
elementary school you went to.
I went to Provost,
Okay.
so no DLI there, but I feel like even I missed out not being able to be part of DLI, and the fact that like maybe if there was like already a set magnet school and having those maybe bus routes for that as well, I feel like that would have been a good opportunity for me. And
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. I think that it's a cool opportunity for students, and I went to Westridge, so I didn't have the opportunity to do it either, but I know some kids who are in Westridge boundaries who go to Lakeview for that opportunity, so I think, like, I agree with her, just having some, like, main schools that have it, just to give those kids opportunity, I guess, but, yeah.
Terry, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I have 2 things. Maybe, in LegCom, maybe we need to start lobbying USBE to give us money for the Timpanogos model, since it's not the state model.
Right, but the funding that we get from the state for one of the schools is usually $5,000 to $7,000 for supplies. That's not going to make a huge difference.
At least some DSA support.
I thought you said it was per grade level that we get.
When I was at Dixon, that's what it was.
So it's per class that's offered, so not per grade level. They get a certain dollar amount per, so like $10,000 for is what we get for, we used to get $10,000 for Chinese, but it was lowered because they are no longer using the University of Utah program that was purchased. And I think Shoreline gets 4,000, so it's not very much.
Or at least open their USBE's mind that this model that Timpanogos uses is actually a really good model.
Yeah, we can work with legislation.
Yeah. And then I had a conversation with a board member from Salt Lake and about when they closed schools a couple of years ago, and she said they actually have a school closure policy, but it actually didn't help them because the policy was created 20 years ago, and the criteria they had 20 years ago didn't actually apply to their situation. She said that they were supposed to close like 11 elementary schools and they only closed 4 because of how hard it was. And the criteria wasn't applicable anymore. So I don't know if policy committee wants to even try to create a policy
We
for
have a
this.
policy, it's 6,900, but it's a small school something policy. I remember the exact, yeah.
So it's not about
And it's
school
basically,
culture.
if a school gets between 300 and 400 in enrollment, it's by school. It states, we have a commitment as Provo, we value neighborhood schools. This was
Yeah.
passed in 2022, so you
Yeah.
might have been on the board. And it just
Yes.
says, okay, if a school falls into this range, it triggers a 3-year plan of work that will be done to try to address that lower enrollment and hit certain, make certain systematic changes with some support to see whether or not that school needs to be closed based on its individual enrollment
And at the
size.
time, I really felt like the superintendent at the time was really targeting Franklin. He wanted to close
I
Franklin,
understand that.
and he could have cared less about any other school.
So the conversation then to have for policy is,
Still
do we
needs to
want
have
a
that.
district policy around district enrollment different from a just small school policy? And I feel like that would be the right
Say that
thing
again?
to do.
What did you say?
Yeah, say it, all right. Oh, okay. Gina,
Okay.
do you have anything to add?
I think we're running out of time. I do think we need some processes. I'm a process and procedure person. We need some processes and procedures in place, kind of like what Lisa was saying, some triggers. And I think that will be helpful. I don't think it's gonna solve the problem, however, because if we see a school dip below a certain number or whatever, then we can take a look at that school, but that school may not be the best when it comes in terms of like the district as a whole.
Yeah.
If the school is in the middle of the city, research shows closing schools in the middle of the city is probably not your best option for a variety of reasons. And so I feel like if we at least get some things in place, which I hesitate to say because the policy committee is already doing 3 times the amount of work that they should
This
be.
is more specific.
But
Very
I do think we need, and I think we need something needs to be done with DLI, and I don't think that something is to close the DLI programs. I think we need to maintain what we can, but the inequities that it's causing are problematic.
So here is what I suggest, and I'm open to feedback, but here's just kind of my brainstorm. So I would suggest that all the board members take some time to look at the DLI folder and review the materials. As Lisa was saying, there's a lot there, and some of it we've seen before, and like me, I've forgotten a lot of it, or the details of it anyway. And then after you've done that, you can submit any remaining questions that you have or information that you want. You can email me with that. Copy Gina too, that's fine. And we need to pick a date, but let me keep talking. You guys can think about how much time we need for that. And then also email Gina and I, what are we trying to accomplish with any adjustments with the DLI program? I would like each board member to answer that for themselves. That's why, and we can't have a discussion through email either. So if you can just send it, that will help as we then plan future agendas, knowing the direction we need to go for continued discussions as a board. So, is there anything else we need to add to the list of what we need to kind of direction, help us with the direction? And how much time, knowing our next meeting's May 12th, but we gotta plan it sooner than that. So, is a week enough time?
I'm also giving you all school improvement plans tomorrow, so.
Well, I mean, we have time to
You're
be
welcome.
thoughtful about this. I feel like we have time to be thoughtful
Okay.
about this. So, and this, because we're also still having conversations around enrollment and those things. So I don't think we have to do it by the next board meeting personally.
Okay. I also know if I don't have a deadline, I will put it off, put it off. So I wonder if we pick a shorter deadline to see how much you can do in that time. And then if you say, I only got through a little bit, but here's what I have so far, and then we can set another deadline. Does that work?
Sure.
Because if we give a month, I'm going to wait 3 weeks and then still run out of time, right? So,
2 to 3 weeks, because even if it's not in time for the 12th, that should be in time for us to take a look at it for the next May meeting.
Okay,
And then people are giving us feedback, they haven't had enough time, we can just continue to.
so maybe by like Friday the 8th? So it's like 2.5 weeks?
Good.
Okay.
And just for clarification, I brought up the funding. The high schools are funded at $800 per bridge section. So the Timpview has like 3 Chinese bridge sections. They have $2,400 for that. So they have a total funding of $7,200. Provo High has 3 Portuguese and 1 Spanish, so they have a total of $3,200 in funding. And the elementary schools have a base funding of $5,750, and that's unless they have an additional, like Canyon Crest does have an additional $7,500 set aside for literacy for books in Spanish. And then the middle schools get $4,500 per language. So there's
Not
Yeah.
very much
no.
in the scheme
And
of
it's
things,
just for,
right?
yeah, materials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Alright.
this was the smallest we've had in a long time, and it will keep dropping.
From the state? And it will keep dropping because?
It's just being absorbed into regular WPU. They don't want to pay for it as an ongoing
Like a
program.
line.
They just, it should be in their
I
mind
see.
sustainable enough that you have built it into your,
Like
to
everything
your own
else that
funding
keeps
structure.
getting pushed into that
Correct.
WPU.
Yep.
Okay, so we will close this discussion and just for the public's awareness and for those who maybe are tuning in now and didn't hear the very beginning, in the context of everything with our declining enrollment and school boundary, taking a step back from that generally to first look at this DLI, and so we're going to focus on that. We're going to keep talking about that DLI, but we also, I just want to give reassurance, we're going to be very transparent about our enrollment and our boundaries and our decisions on that, and we do want to involve the community and the public with that. And we appreciate people engaging with us in productive ways to help us solve those challenges. So, and what we're going to do now, because our business meeting starts in about 15 minutes, is we're going to save our school fee schedule for the business meeting, as well as our consent calendar review. We'll go over that when we actually go to approve the calendar. So I'll draw your attention to our board calendar, and that is that tomorrow night we have our Spring Creek Community Meeting at 6 p.m. And then Thursday night at 6 p.m. is our foundation's basket auction fundraiser at Centennial, and there's a lot of fun things.
I went and helped today with the baskets, and there's some pretty awesome stuff. Bring your money.
You can do a ride along with a cop, you guys.
Yeah.
Wait,
They were creating the little pop-cars.
Okay, Lisa.
Just a question about that. So I have college graduation for kids, and so I'm gonna come late, but is there a way, I know in the past there were ways you could bid on silent auctions online.
Silent Auction has an app.
How do I
and
find that? Is it in
so-
my email and I've missed it? I'm
No,
sorry.
they were
It has
working
not
to get
been-
the link set up, so once the link's set up, we will be sharing that.
Because I do
It
want to
has
bid, but I
not.
might not be a
So-
live auction bidder.
Yes, so people who
price-wise,
can't be
so-
there
It has not been created yet.
are working on
Okay,
it.
okay,
Yeah.
but will you send it to me?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
wanna-
And we're gonna put it out on the PCSD Foundation
Okay, great.
has a social media. We'll put it out on that
Thank you.
and spread that widely. And anyone who's gotten an email in the past, like who's attended auction, they're on the email list,
Okay.
we'll send it out through that as well. So, and then next Tuesday night is our recognition dinner, and it's noticed as a board meeting, but there's no board business happening there. We're recognizing our outstanding educators for the year. And then Thursday, April 30th, we have our joint meeting. We do these twice a year with the city council, and the mayor will be there. And Gina and I just sat down with city council leadership and set the agenda on that, which I need to get to Bonnie. So, and then our Franklin community meeting is that night, Thursday, April 30th at 6 p.m. And then Provo Peaks is Monday, May 4th, also at 6 p.m. And Amelia Earhart's May 14th at 6 p.m. And then there's a few things in there as well that you can look at, including upcoming graduations. So, All right, do we have a motion to adjourn our study session?
I move that we adjourn our study session.
Okay, motion by Board
Is that
Member
your
Boyce, do we
question?
have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Van Wagenen, we're adjourned and we'll begin our business meeting at 7 o'clock at ABC.